Hello and welcome to the 4-night Season 2 premiere of the Introverted Poets podcast. I'm your host, Ileana Jade. For those of you unfamiliar with the podcast, we are a safe space for the shy writer or poet that wishes to stay anonymous. First launched on SoundCloud 2016, official launch March of 2020, on whichever platform you hear us now. We did this as soon as the shutdown started. Si hablamos español, and welcome the bilingual writer. Ways to be featured on this podcast are by submitting stories or poems to us at the Introverted Poet Society at gmail.com, our Tumblr at www.theintrovertedpoets.tumblr.com, Instagram at Introverted Poets Podcast, and our Twitter at IntroPoetPod. All of these are all together lowercase. The info for where you can find all of our social media links will be posted on the description for this episode. We first post a story or poem on our social media 2 weeks prior to the recording of the episode. This is done for the purpose of letting the fans and audience read and submit questions about the story, author, poet, or show. Then when we record an interview via Zoom audio, we ask the questions submitted. Once this is done, the author reads their story or poem. Now, Happy New Year! Hello! I hope everyone's 2021 is starting off okay. I know right now we're enduring our hardest winter. For those of you not familiar, the station is centered in Laredo, Texas, at least the headquarters is. And Texas right now is enduring their harshest winter yet. This was something we weren't prepared for and caught off guard. A lot of people went without power and are still without power. A lot of people don't have running water. And it's really hard. However, I do want to give a shout out for those people that have been stepping up and doing good for the community, whether in Laredo or in San Antonio. I will only be talking about Laredo experiences since I am the one that's in Laredo. I would like to give a big shout out to Lorena Delgado. She was giving out free pollito con fideo in the Southside area for free. I would also like to give a shout out to the United South football team. They gave out 100 pizzas for families that were in need and affected the week of February 14th through February 18th. Right now, this show is being recorded February 18th, 2021. And I also want to give another shout out to Pepe Gomez and his friends who gave out free food off of McPherson Road. Thank you so much. And I'm sure there was a ton of other people giving out free food and helping the community. It's just that I personally didn't see it myself, but if you did, thank you so much for helping our community. Laredo really needed it, and even though, our leaders may not have stepped up, or a lot of people think they did not step up, at least we were able to help each other out community-wise, love thy neighbor style, and that makes me very happy that we as a community came through and pulled together. Also, a big shout out to the South Texas Food Bank. They've been going to neighborhoods and asking if people need food so that they can donate it to them rather than having it sit there, going bad. So big shout out to them as well for helping the community out. If you know anybody else that was a huge community helper, whether it was giving milk to people that needed milk, eggs, toilet paper, because right now the grocery stores are barren due to a combination of things, of people hoarding, the light going out, and the trucks not being able to come through to stock up the stores because of the icy conditions that Texas highways were not structured for. So if you know of people that helped out in the community, send me an email to the Introverted Poet Society at gmail.com, or shoot us a tweet or a DM on Instagram, and we'll be happy to shout them out here on the Introverted Poets podcast for being a community helper, whether it be right now during trying times in Laredo, Texas, or anywhere in the nation. Just send us an email. Now back to the show and what we do here, which is storytelling and poetry readings. I wanted to get back to what the first episode ever was, which was what we call the pilot. The first episode to air back in 2016, well, back in 2020 to be truthfully, was called The Collector, written by yours truly, Ileana Jade. Now, we will be kicking off the second season with part 2, or part 1 of The Collector show, let's say, called Summer of 1997. Background on this story. This is the first part of where The Collector officially gets started. The Collector, for those of you who haven't read it, spoiler alert, It takes place in 2016. Summer of 1997 is about, 1997 and how he first got roped into all of this and about his first kill. It is based on the infamous Texas killing fields. For those of you not familiar with that, it's a span of highway on I-45 that stretches between Houston and the Galveston area. During the 70s through 2000s, over 30 girls have gone missing or been found dead on that stretch of highway. For more information, be sure to check out the YouTube channel Criminally Listed. They do a special on Texas killing fields. Links will be provided in the episode description as well for the YouTube channel. Not only is there this special on it, there's also a book called Deliver Us by Catherine Casey. She writes about the cases as well and is more centered on the victim versus the killer because unlike most documentaries, I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but they tend to focus on the killer instead of the victims. Look at how infamous Ted Bundy and Richard Ramirez are because of such things. Whereas the real victims, no one really thinks about, or so to speak. Catherine Casey does something completely different and takes it from the victim's standpoint and focuses on them versus the potential suspects. And for those of you that are located in Laredo, Texas, there is a book club called the Laredo Book Club. And we did read this book in January, and it was an interesting read, very brutal, but interesting nonetheless. And they collaborated with the Phoenix Bookstore. And if you're located in Laredo, as I mentioned, the Phoenix Bookstore is located next to the old historic BMT at 1602 Victoria Street. They have amazing customer service such as curbside and delivery. They are open on weekends. For more information, follow them on Instagram at the Phoenix Bookstore One. More info will be provided in the episode description. As for me, I have been fascinated and shocked by it all, and decided to write fiction pieces based on it from the 90s to the 2000s. I chose to do this because it is something different and challenging, and I like a good challenge. It forces me to learn and to push myself. So due to this being a whole different genre of writing, a lot of research did go into these stories. I have now completed part 2 of the series, working on part 3. Normally, I write autobiographical fiction, and it's about situations that I've been in personally. But now I'm looking up city maps, songs that were popular, fashion, lingo, cars of this time periods to make it as accurate as possible, just because the 90s holds a special place in my heart. So due to the amount of research put into this short story, it became 69 pages and will be a 4-night event. So without further delay, here is Summer of 1987 by yours truly, Ileana Jade. Summer of 1997. Monday, June 9th. It was hot, muggy. The day began at 6 a.m. A mother yelled out, "Girls, get up! Campus today!" Groaned one. "Come on, let's get going before your mom gets mad, Casey," Elizabeth, her friend of 16 years, stated. The girls were upstairs in Casey's room. Elizabeth had spent the night like she had done many times before. Both girls had slept on the floor on a makeshift bed made out of 6 to 5 old comforters and blankets. It was the first day of summer, which meant the first day of camp. This meant the girls would get dressed, eat breakfast, and hitch a ride towards their inner Houston area church. Elizabeth stood up and turned on the light. Casey, not being a morning person, rolled onto her other side. "I'm going to shower and get ready first then. Unlike you, I don't want to look ugly around the cute boys," teased Elizabeth. Be quiet," groaned Casey. Elizabeth stood and walked out of the room with a towel in her hand. Shortly after, Casey's mom walked in and saw Casey still sleeping. "En serio, Casey?" "Casey, get up and get ready. What will our pastors think if you show up to camp looking bad? Ándale, get up and eat breakfast." Meanwhile, Lizzie gets ready. Begrudgingly, Casey got up. Her front half of her hair flat and the back part a bird's nest. Her curls had gotten tangled and created tunnels while she had slept. She went downstairs and sat at the kitchen table, still half asleep, her eyes half closed. Her mother, Maria, was making tortillas on the comal, had frijoles in the pot and coffee brewing. "Mija, are you going to want huevo with frijoles or do I make you barritas for your frijoles?" No, mommy, just a burrito. Are you sure? It is the first day of youth camp. A big breakfast would do you good. Okay, mommy. Maria then proceeded to crack 2 eggs and place them on the frying pan. Casey's father, Juan, walked into the kitchen and began pouring himself a cup of coffee. Good morning, amor, he greeted. Buenos dias, she kissed him. Her father then walked past her mother and sat at the kitchen table with her. Mija, buenos dias. Buenos dias, Daddy. Are you excited for your first day of youth camp? Yes, papi. Hopefully this year we can be youth leaders. Si Dios quiere, mija. Claro, si Dios quiere. Maria chimed in while placing a plate of frijoles caldudos, 2 strips of bacon, 2 eggs over easy, and 2 flour tortillas down onto her husband's part of the table. Ahorita te agarro los tuyos, mija. No te preocupes, mommy. Right now I'll eat when Lizzie comes down. Oh yes, you won't have time to eat, mija. Eat now and then go get ready while she eats. But mama, Casey. Okay. Maria placed a similar-looking plate down in front of Casey. Casey, without hesitation, began eating her breakfast. As she was eating, she began to think about what this summer was going to bring her. It was the summer right before her senior year of high school. It was an exciting time. She felt as if the world was in the palm of her hand, barely unfurling. Being that she and Elizabeth were in the track team meant they got to go on exciting field trips and meets only seniors got the privilege to attend, along with homecoming, prom, and graduation. The events the future held filled her with optimism. This was going to be their year. Not long, though, Elizabeth came down the stairs and sat down at the kitchen table. Elizabeth was wearing jeans, a yellow t-shirt, yellow Converse, and a white headband pulling her long straight hair back. Buenos dias! Buenos dias, Lizzie, greeted Juan. Good morning, mija, greeted Maria. Sit down, here's your breakfast. Eat now before you run out of time. What do you want, juice or coffee like Casey? I don't like cafe. I'll have juice. Casey, go shower, mija. Casey finished her baking and ran upstairs to shower. She saw the time was 6:55 and quickly panicked. She and Lizzie needed to be out of the house by 7:15 to beat the traffic driving into Houston. Being that they were in the northern part of the city meant they had to get going even earlier than most. Traffic was always a guarantee. However, living in New Caney provided scenic running locations. Once ready, Casey was wearing jeans similar to Lizzie and a red t-shirt and her white tennis shoes. The time was already 7:12 a.m. Casey, hurry up! Your father's getting ready to leave without you, shouted her mother. Luckily, both Casey and Elizabeth were smart enough to pack their camp bags the night before. If not, they would have definitely been late. Casey quickly ran down the stairs with both bags in hand and flew out the door. Bye, Mommy, she shouted. Bye! Casey ran towards the passenger door and sat in the front seat, quickly putting her seatbelt on. Elizabeth was already sitting in the back seat, ready to go. Casey's dad drove into the city traffic. The camp began at 9 a.m. The drive usually took 90 minutes to get anywhere in the larger Houston area. The drive always provided the girls with quiet time to think, chat, and listen to music. Casey's dad usually chauffeured the girls through their practices, schools, and camps since they became friends during early childhood. It began when Elizabeth and her family moved into the neighborhood in the early 80s. Casey's dad was watering the grass out on the lawn when he noticed a U-Haul and a second vehicle pull up behind it. Out came Elizabeth's dad, Hector, and behind them in the other vehicle was his wife, Lydia, and a baby Lizzie in tow. Hector made his way across the street to introduce himself to Casey's dad, and the rest is history. Still staring out the window, Casey was excited. This was going to be their senior year. This meant they got to be the leaders for the youth camps at their church as well. Throughout their friendships and childhoods, Casey and Lizzie shared common interests. They both loved their church, running, and one-act play. Pulling up into the parking lot of their church, Templo Nuestro Church, a house of Christian worship, read the sign beneath it. The parking lot was filled with different types of buses and cars, all from different cities and school districts surrounding the Houston area. Both girls exited Juan's 1997 Buick LeSabre. Okay, girls, don't forget I'll be picking you up at 5-ish, ordered Juan. We won't, Papi, answered Casey. See you for dinner. Bye, Mr. Fuentes, shouted Elizabeth. Both girls stood in front of the church and watched as Juan drove off. All right, here we go. Our first day as youth leaders, whispered Casey. Both girls turned around and began making their way to the church's main office. They walked between the megaplex's buildings, one on the right facing the I-45 highway and the other facing the greater downtown Houston area. In the middle of both buildings was the main office. The girls walked into the secretary, who was sitting towards the window facing the right. Good morning, Lizzie and Casey. Pastor Lynn is waiting for you all in the lounge, she instructed calmly. Marcela had been the secretary for the church for as long as the girls could remember. Not much older, Marcela had streaks of gray and blonde in her once long, black curly hair. The girls walked past her desk and into the lounge of the pastors. Once in the lounge, there was a lot of noise and clamoring around. The church pastors and youth leaders were all scrambling, some with clipboards, others with boxes. Whoa, I'm not used to seeing so many people, exclaimed Casey. I know, right? It's like all of Houston's in here, replied Elizabeth. Oh, come on, girls, don't exaggerate. The Lord can hear, said a familiar voice. The girls turned around and saw the church's head pastor, Glenn Diaz, standing at about 5'10", tan, slim, and with pepper hair. Good morning, Pastor Glenn, they greeted. How are my two new youth leaders feeling on their first day of camp? He inquired. Excited, shouted Casey. A bit nervous, shyly added Elizabeth. Don't be nervous, Lizzie. The Lord is our shepherd and he will guide us through this magnificent camp. Now, here are our youth leader shirts that we ordered 2 weeks ago, and here are your clipboards. Now we'll be having some visitors. You two girls will be the liaisons to our visiting speakers. Now go meet with Marcela so she can help you make the goodie bags for the children and our speakers. Pastor Glenn handed the girls their items and went off on his way. Both Lizzie and Casey looked at each other for a moment. Wow, a lot of responsibility for camp leaders, huh? Mentioned Casey. Yeah, but remember, it will look good on our resumes when we apply for colleges, reminded Lizzie in a positive tone. You're right, Lizzie, and it's not like we have to deal with the kids directly. We get to do behind-the-scenes stuff. Exactly. Now let's find Marcela so we can make the bags and see who is going to be our guest speakers. You're actually excited for the guest speakers? Asked Casey. You're not? It's just, I don't know. Pastor Glenn brings those stay away from drugs people every summer, and they always do the same thing. Well, this year I heard that it was going to be different and with multiple speakers. Hey, maybe that band POD's going to come. Keep dreaming, Casey. The girls walked to a table in the back of the lounge and found Marcela. Okay, girls, here we're going to start making the goodie bags for the guest speakers and other visitors. We're going to put Templo Nuestro sweat towels in the bag, a water bottle, pencils, stress balls, and a notepad with psalms written on them. They are all going into this big green City of Houston tote, Marcela instructed excitedly. Do they have to be made in any particular order? Asked Casey. No, just make sure for right now that there are no leftover items. Now, girls, make sure they're done before our first guests arrive in 2 hours. I'll be back. I'm going to get the prize bags ready for the children, responded Marcela while she walked away from the table. The girls looked at the clock on the wall and saw that it was 9:15 already, and they had to get moving. Casey and Elizabeth quickly sat down and began making tote bags for the guest speakers as per Marcela's orders. As the girls quietly assembled the bags, the noise in the pastor's lounge began to slowly die down. This was due to the pastors organizing other youth leaders and leaving the convention buildings. One by one, all the pastors and the respected youth leaders left to go get the camp started. Unlike Casey and Elizabeth, other youth leaders their age were going to be in charge of overlooking the younger children who are attending the camp. Every summer, the format stayed the same. The members of Templo Nuestro who were seniors in high school were to become youth leaders and assist fellow pastors in the camps and sermons. The youth leaders assisted the pastors in helping entertain the children during the camp by making sure they paid attention, substituted for the pastors in Bible study if needed, helped with the food drive, etc. Due to Casey and Elizabeth being members since childhood, the girls had a special pick and chose to work behind the scenes this summer as opposed to participating with the children directly. Since the lounge had fallen quiet, the girls were able to quickly finish the bags in less than 2 hours. Just as they were finishing, Marcela came back with a group of 6 people, 3 men and 3 women. Both girls looked up at them. Girls, I want you to meet the group who will be assisting our pastors throughout the week. They are an improv group called Pray. The girls looked at the members. One was tall, light-skinned, with black gelled hair, blue jeans, and a flannel shirt. A man. The second was a bit taller. The first male with light brown hair, also gelled back with a red and white baseball tee and blue jeans. The third male was short, tan, husky, with black curly hair, blue jeans, and a black t-shirt. The first female was blonde with curly short hair, fair skin, and was about 5'6". She was wearing blue jeans and a white t-shirt with a cross on it. The second female was a brunette with straight long hair, fair skinned, also wearing jeans and a red t-shirt. The third female was taller than the girls and was wearing jeans and a t-shirt, as well as her hair was in a pixie cut. Casey and Elizabeth were, of course, more into the male counterparts. "Hi," said the first male. "I am Isaiah." "I'm Edward," said the second male. "And I'm Joshua," said the third. "I'm Sarah," greeted the first female. "I'm Joanna," added the second. "And I am Hannah," said the third. "Hi, I'm Casey, and this is Elizabeth," she stuttered. "The girls will be your liaisons and will assist you with anything you all need, and they also have something to give you," Marcella said while motioning for the girls to hand over the bags to each of the members. Casey and Elizabeth quickly got a bag for each of the members and handed them one. "Here you go," said Casey while handing bags to Isaiah and Edward, while Elizabeth handed bags to Joshua and Joanna. Marcella handed bags to Sarah and Hannah. "Oh, wow, God bless you all," gushed Edward. "Oh, cool, a notepad," exclaimed Joanna. "Alrighty, here is the itinerary for today and the week," Marcella said, handing the clipboard to Isaiah. "Anything else you might need, feel free to ask Lizzie and Casey. I will be assisting the pastors out in the assembly." Marcella closed the door to the lounge. The girls were left alone with the troop. "Alrighty, we'll be speaking to the kids after lunch. Remember our prep work group," instructed Isaiah. "Yes," the remainder agreed. The troop then turned to face the girls. "It is barely going to be noon. When does lunch end?" asked Edward. His smile was bright and inviting. His hazel eyes made Lizzie and Casey feel an awakening in their stomachs. An hour?" Lizzie quietly whispered. "I'm sorry, I couldn't hear that," said Edward, who walked closer to Lizzie and leaned in inches away from her face, all while maintaining a smile. Lizzie stuttered. "Lunch ends at 1 with all the children from our parishioners and the ones from other cities. We give them an hour to form a line, get their sack lunches, and just relax. Then at 1 o'clock is when the guest speaker goes on and teaches the kids the word of our Lord," answered Casey sternly. Edward then straightened himself and smiled at Casey. "Why, thank you for sharing," he gleefully exclaimed. "Not a problem," replied Casey. Lizzie looked at Casey and gave a quick look with her eyes. Casey then gave Lizzie a quick glance back. The excitement in Isaiah's tone and the warm smiles in his troops' faces made it easy for the girls to help them in their task. "Sure, aside from going first in the icebreaker, what else can we assist you all with?" asked Lizzie. "I'm glad you asked. You can help us by writing what each color of candy means on the board. I would, but my handwriting is bad and the girls are getting lessons after the icebreaker ready," said Edward while handing markers to the girls. The girls took a bucket full of dry erase markers in multiple colors. Joshua then wielding a dry erase board where the girls could write the key to what each color of chocolate represented. While eating their sack lunches, the girls quietly worked on their task. "Psst! What, Casey? Edward's a cutie now?" "Yeah, I guess." "Well, I saw him first," Casey declared. "Shh, he's too old for us," noted Lizzie. "No way, he looks like he could be 19. "Be quiet, Casey, here he comes," warned Lizzie. Edward walked near the girls. "Hey, how is everything coming along over here?" he asked. "Pretty good, almost finished," replied Casey. Good, he noted while staring at Lizzie, drawing borders around the words on the board. "Wow, that's really pretty, girls." Or, "Wow, you girls are just better than guys at decorating. You're doing an amazing job. Lisa, is it?" Lizzie got nervous as she heard him call her by the wrong name. I guess," she nervously responded. "It's Lizzie, short for Elizabeth," corrected Casey. "Oh, okay," said Edward while nodding his head in agreement with a toothy grin. "Sorry, I called you Elisa, Elizabeth, or Lizzie." "You may call me Elizabeth or Lizzie, whichever is easier for you." "Liz. Cool. I'm going to call you Liz, and you can call me Eddie." "And you can call me Casey for Casey," interrupted Casey. Cool. Call me Eddie too, Casey." "Hey, Eddie, come over here and help us with these prayer packets," shouted Joshua from the other side of the room. Hey girls, so I gotta go help Josh after this. Come and sit with us, we got another 30 minutes. He quietly walked away to the other side of the lounge where Josh and Isaiah were sitting, stapling the prayer packets. The three girls were eating lunch and sitting in a circle talking amongst themselves. "Oh my gosh, Lizzie, why did you freeze like that?" whispered Casey. "I don't know." "Is it because he's so dreamy?" "Yeah, he kind of looks like DiCaprio, eh?" "Jack!" Casey whispered dramatically like Kate Winslet. "Oh, hush, Casey," giggled Lizzie. "I can't wait for that movie to come out." "Same. We are so gonna go see it," declared Casey. The door opened and in came Marcela with the other Templo Nuestro pastors. Pastor Glenn, his wife Mary Elizabeth, also a pastor, Pastor Emmanuel, Pastor Gilberto, and Pastor Ramiro. Mary Elizabeth, Pastor Glenn's wife, was about 5'6", tan with a curvy build, bleach blonde hair with her roots showing, bangs, and wore gold shrimp-looking earrings. Anywhere Pastor Glenn, Mary Elizabeth was sure to be. If Pastor Glenn held Bible study for the men, Mary Elizabeth held it separately for the ladies of Templo Nuestro Christian Church. She was the first lady of Templo Nuestro and made sure everybody knew. Pastor Emmanuel Sanchez was in his mid-40s and was married to Marcela. He was about 5'8", had short black handlebar mustache, and was tan and loved his carpentry business. Like Jesus, he felt that the carpentry was important for the soul. Aside from assisting the visitors in the church, Marcela enjoyed baking outside of her church duties and ran a small bakery off of Telephone Road. Pastor Gilberto Juarez was plump, athletic, 5'9", and fair-skinned, married to the church choir leader Lucinda. Both were in charge of the substance abuse counseling after church on Sundays and of the premarital counseling classes as well. All the girls knew was that it was for people getting married. They didn't understand why a marriage would have problems before the actual wedding itself. Aside from assisting in the church, both Mr. and Mrs. Juarez enjoyed running their private counseling practice. Pastor Ramiro Villarreal was the youngest of the pastors and the only one to not have a wife at Templo Nuestro. Unlike the other pastors, he was in his mid-30s as opposed to 40s. He was 5'10", tan, slim, brown eyes, brown short hair, and a church comedian. All the girls at Templo Nuestro fawned over him, and the children in the kiddie church camp referred to him as Commander Ramiro. Aside from doing comedy for the church benefit fundraisers, he holds Mass for the children under 12 while the adults attend Mass in the main assembly hall. Aside from these duties, he also participates in mission work, leading him to travel often during the holidays. "All right, lunch is just about over," chimed Mary Elizabeth. "That's right, honey, which means the kids will be ready to see what's next on the agenda," added Pastor Glenn. "We are ready to go," shouted Isaiah. "Okay, so the ladies will lead you out into the main hall where we have Sunday English Mass, and then the floor will be all yours for the next 2 hours," instructed Pastor Glenn. With that, all the pastors, including Marcela, walked out. Elizabeth and Casey stood up from where they were sitting and walked towards the door. "So we follow you girlies?" asked Hannah. "Yes, ma'am," replied Elizabeth. The girls began walking with the troop behind them, down the corridor and out towards the glass doors. Behind them, they could hear the six rehearsing and warming up. As they were walking towards the main hall on the right side of the administrative's office, they could feel the adrenaline beginning to rise. It was just then the girls realized what they had agreed to earlier. They had agreed to perform in front of 600-plus Christian youth. As this thought entered their minds, they finally made it into the backstage area of the main hall. "My goodness, Casey, what are we getting to?" Lizzie anxiously whispered. "I don't know, but I'm sure we'll be fine," Casey assured. "This isn't like track. We have to talk," panicked Lizzie. "Are you girls ready for your onstage debut? Pastor Gilberto told me you all prefer to be behind the scenes," an excited voice stated behind them. Both girls turned around and saw it was Eddie. They were both in shock. Not one of them said a word. "Oh, no, don't be nervous. I will guide you through it. Just make sure to sit somewhere we can see you. Go sit with the audience. We don't do icebreakers right away anyway," he assured them. Both girls walked out into the crowd and sat in the front row. "Are you sure about this, Casey? It's not too late to run," suggested Lizzie. "Oh, Lizzie, we need to be able to confront our public speaking fears one day. Besides, we are seniors in high school. You know what that means," reminded Casey. "College time? Yeah. And if we can't talk to a church or a boy like Edward, how are we going to be able to talk to the cute boys who aren't in this congregation or from Houston when we go to San Marcos?" "Valid point, Casey," agreed Lizzie. The curtains came down and the lights went out. The PA went off. "Hello, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, Christians gathered here at Templo Nuestro Christian Church's annual youth summer camp. Not only will we be getting closer to our Lord and learning about what it means to be a Christian in this ever-changing world, but also we will be having fun. The music began playing. It was the kind of music you would hear at a Houston Rockets game, but the song, instead of saying, pump it up, was, pray it up while you're feeling holy and the Spirit is going through you, pray it up. The spotlight went to the left-hand side of the stage and out came Isaiah walking and clapping. Ooh, ooh, he shouted into his headset microphone. Then another spotlight hit the right-hand side of the stage and out came Hannah skipping onto the stage while simultaneously clapping. Then the spotlight went behind the audience. Everyone turned around and in came Joanna running from the audience towards the stage. She jumped onto the stage and proceeded to do 2 cartwheels and 2 backflips. The crowd went wild, instantly cheering and stomping their feet. Then from the left-hand side of the stage came Edward. He dropped onto the floor and began doing the worm until he reached center stage. Once there, he proceeded to do some head spins and breakdancing moves. The girls all screamed and cheered. A 5th spotlight came out from center stage and moonwalking in came Joshua to much applause, though not as much as Joanna or Edward. Then from underneath the stage came in Sarah. Once all 6 were on stage and made their entrance, the music stopped. The lights turned back on. With the lights on, the crowd could see the headset microphones. Each of the 6 had all in their baseball tees and jeans. Isaiah, the troop's leader, took center stage. Good afternoon, Templo Nuestro Christian Church. To which the children in the crowd all cheered and yelled back, Good afternoon. Come on. This is Houston, home of the mighty Rockets and NASA Space Center. I think you all can do better than that. How about one more time? Good afternoon, Templo Nuestro Christian Church, home of the Houston Rockets and astronauts, he repeated. This time 10 times louder than the first response, all in unison. The 600 plus children and other church members in attendance shouted, Good afternoon. Now, that much better, replied Isaiah. Now let me introduce myself. I am Isaiah. Here on my right is Hannah. She skipped on in. Hello, boys and girls, she cheered. Over here on my left is Joanna. Hi, Joanna, the children all shouted. Hi, kids, she softly sang. She is a cheerleader of the group, explained Isaiah. I love cheering for Jesus, she shouted. Don't we all? Asked Isaiah. Yes, the children all shouted. Now, over here next to Joanna is Edward. He's the comedian of the group. Hello, kiddos, he said in a weird deep voice. The children all giggled. And next to Edward is Joshua, a big Michael Jackson fan. I love to pray to Jesus, he said in a Michael Jackson way. And last but not least, Sarah. Hi, kiddos. Hi, Sarah. Sarah is our theater leader. She is one impeccable actress. Now, together, all 6 of us combined make up the super uber trooper group that loves Jesus, known as Pray, stated Isaiah. Has anyone ever heard of Pray before? No? Okay, well, that is why your pastors, such as Pastor Glenn, Pastor Ramiro, and all the other good folks here, asked us to come and talk to you all, stated Joanna. We are a fun group whose mission is to spread the word of God, added Edward, and spread awareness against the dangers of strangers, informed Joshua, and the dangers of drugs and alcohol, chimed Hannah. But we do this all while singing and having fun, cheered Sarah. Now, from today through Friday, we will be hosting afternoon assemblies and having loads of activities. But first things first, let's get to know each other a little bit, shouted Isaiah with enthusiasm. And how are we going to do that? Asked Hannah as she were in an infomercial. I'm glad you asked, Hannah. We are going to play a game called Icebreakers, like the Mentos candy, only we don't have the candy and it's a different kind of candy in a game, instructed Isaiah. And we are not doing it with Mentos, but
with M&Ms. Each color represents a different question to be answered by the person who draws it. As Isaiah described the activity, Joshua and Sarah rolled out the board both Casey and Lizzie had worked on in the morning. Oh my God, this is it. Shh, don't take the Lord's name in vain. I'm sorry, I'm just really nervous, whispered Casey. Okay, so Hannah got a red candy. Red means something you did yesterday. So boys and girls, Hannah will tell me something she did yesterday, explained Isaiah. Well, yesterday I went hiking before taking the drive here to Rockets Country. Woohoo! Woohoo! The children cheered back. Now, my turn. Isaiah stuck his hand in the M&M bag and took out a blue candy. Well, now blue means something I learned last week. Well, I learned how to fish last week. Now, to make this a little more exciting, I'm going to need 2 volunteers from the crowd, stated Edward. He looked out into the crowd and quickly spotted Casey and Lizzie sitting in the third row. How about you 2 girls, he said, pointing at them. The spotlight was then on them. In a flash, they were asked to walk onto the stage. Both Casey and Lizzie sheepishly walked on. Come on, don't be shy, he reinforced. Both girls walked up through the left-hand side of the stage and slowly made their way towards the center where the troupe was standing. Casey stood next to Hannah and Joanne, while Lizzie stood next to Isaiah and Sarah. Okay, here we have these 2 lovely volunteers. What are your names? Sarah handed a mic to Casey and Edward. I'm Casey Fuentes, Casey confidently said. They all turned and looked towards Lizzie now. And I'm Lizzie, she meekly stated. With a big enthusiastic smile and pearly whites showing, Edward turned to the crowd and shouted into the mic. Well, boys and girls, ladies and gents of Temple Nuestro in Houston, Texas, home of the Rockets, let's give a big round of applause so loud the angels can hear us in heaven for Casey and Lizzie. The children all shouted and applauded in unison. The applause all sounded as if one giant robot was clapping for the troupe and 2 girls. Once the applause and cheers died down, Edward stepped aside from center stage and let Isaiah take lead. Isaiah walked up to the girls. First off, thank you. You 2 young ladies are doing an amazing job volunteering for this icebreaker. Now, the purpose of the icebreakers is that we all get to know each other better. I want you all to do this with your neighbors sitting next to you towards your right. If not your right, then your left. And if not your left, well, someone you don't know. Ha ha, he instructed. So you 2 said your names are Casey and Lizzie? Yes, answered both girls. Okay. Now, Joanna and Hannah here are providing you a bowl where you can stick your hands in. Joanna and Hannah held a colorful bowl of the milk chocolate pieces. Casey stuck her hand in first. Okay, here goes nothing. Lizzie took out a green candy and Casey an orange one. Wow, green for Lizzie, shouted Hannah enthusiastically. Okay, so green means your favorite movie. What is your favorite movie, Lizzie? Asked Hannah. My favorite movie's Grease? Lizzie nervously answered. Now, what color did Casey get, Joanna? Asked Joshua. Casey got an orange one. Orange means one thing you do well. Casey, what is one thing you're extremely good at? Asked Joanna. I'm really good at running, she answered confidently. Oh, really? Asked Isaiah. Yeah. Both Lizzie and I are senior track runners this year at our high school. We can't wait to go to all the meets this upcoming season, Casey reiterated. That's awesome. I bet you win all the track meets for the church, stated Isaiah, and the crowd of children and senior youth leaders cheered and applauded. It was true. Both girls were star athletes not only at their high school in New Caney, but at their church as well. Now, boys and girls, your youth leaders and pastors will be passing 1 jar filled with colored candies, 1 per row. So please share and get to know each other when they're being passed out. These activities are meant to be fun and also for us to know each other, emphasized Isaiah. After the troupe turned off their mics and huddled up in a circle, leaving the 2 girls standing in the middle of the stage, all the pastors of Templo Nuestro began forming groups of 20 and handling buckets around. We should help with these icebreakers, Casey, mentioned Lizzie. Yeah, I didn't know our auditorium could fit this many people, stated Casey. An ocean of bodies and we were at the shore. No kidding, Lizzie. Hey girls, a loud voice shouted from behind them. They turned around and saw Edward coming towards them. You all did great. I just wanted to say on behalf of all of us from Pray, we are all very proud of you. Thanks, Eddie, said Casey. Thank you, Edward, said Lizzie. Oh, come on, you don't have to call me Edward, Lizzie. I don't call you Elizabeth. It's okay to call me Eddie. Oh, all right, if you insist, replied Lizzie. Okay, well, I'm going to go help out your pastors with these icebreakers. Edward hopped off the stage and made his way towards Pastor Ramiro. The girls both followed suit behind and made their way towards Marcela. Girls, she stated, glad you are here. How about you two make a group of 20 students for the two of you and you all do the icebreakers? You mean we lead a group of 20 together or separately? Separately, Lizzie, come on. You are going to be a senior. You need to get out of your shell, mija. Si no, no vas a estar lista para el colegio. Now, is this the time to start practicing your leadership skills? So, here are the buckets. Now you get these 20 and Casey get those 20 over there. Both girls began to walk towards an open space in the auditorium. Oh, and one more thing, girls. Yes, Marcela, they both replied. Separate. I don't want 40 students all bunched up together. Casey to the left side of the auditorium and Lizzie go to the far right. As always, the girls did what they were told. Lizzie went to the far right and Casey to the left. Both girls made their sets of 20 line up into 2 rows of 10. Lizzie introduced herself and handed the bucket, the candies around down the line. Take one down and pass it around and so on and so forth. When the last one gets it, let me know, she calmly instructed. It was always easier for her to talk to small groups of children than it was when it came to peers of her age, or boys. This was easier due to the children being members of the church, therefore children she has watched over with Pastor Ramiro whenever he needed assistance at the kiddie church. Over on the left, Casey gave out similar instructions. Casey, being the extroverted of the two, never had a hard time publicly speaking in front of a crowd or a small group of people. She certainly didn't find it difficult to keep up with her peers or boys she found handsome. As Casey was instructed for 20 to look at the overhead and figure what each color of candy represented, she noticed someone was looking at her from afar. It was Edward. He was talking with Pastor Ramiro and the children in the circle, but kept locking eyes with Casey. Casey smiled and winked at him. Edward didn't respond. He just stared at her blankly before giving her his back. An hour had passed and the auditorium was still filled with the echoes of chatter. Once the icebreaker activity had ended, the parade troop began gathering the buckets and storing them away in the closet of the auditorium. Okay, boys and girls, now that we are done with the icebreakers, we will be returning to our seats to begin afternoon worship and prayer before we head home for the day, stated Pastor Glenn. Aw, man, shouted the children. Now, boys and girls, is that any way to act towards our Lord and salvation? Asked Mary Elizabeth. No, they again all shouted. Now let's all calmly return to our seats and begin worship and prayer, she reiterated. Because we love Jesus, Pastor Ramiro sang over the mic. The lights turned off and the spotlights on stage were now on Pastor Glenn, Mary Elizabeth, Edward, Joshua, Isaiah, Joanna, Sarah, Hannah, and Marcela. All began to sing together. The children and other youth leaders were now at their seats, all joining hands and singing along. After worship and prayer were finished, the girls helped their pastors line up the children and load them onto their buses. The first day of camp had ended and the girls were both exhausted. It was 3 p.m. by the time it all finished. By the time the last bus had left, it was now 4:45. Both girls walked back into the main office and patiently waited indoors for Casey's dad to pick them up. Are you sure we just can't take the bus? We still have to get some running in today, asked Lizzie. It's really hot outside right now, Lizzie. You want to get a heat stroke? We live in Houston, Casey. It's always hot outside. The girls were sitting on the chairs in the lobby right under the vent. Lizzie threw her head back and was about to close her eyes when she heard the lounge door swing open. The loud noise startled her and she sat straight back up on her seat. All 6 of the parade troop were making their way towards the exit. Bye, girls. We'll be seeing you bright and early tomorrow, said Isaiah. Bye, they both responded. After Isaiah, it was Sarah, then Joanna, Joshua, Hannah, and last but not least, Edward. The first 5 walked out of the door and disappeared into the parking lot. Edward stayed behind and was signing out at the front desk where Marcela was usually stationed. Everything was wonderful, he emphatically stated. Can't wait to be back tomorrow. You all are awesome. I feel right at home, and it's all thanks to you, lovely liaisons. You have assisted us so well. God bless you all so much. He finished signing out and walked past the girls. Before he made it towards the glass doors, he stopped and turned right back and made his way towards the girls. Hey ladies, I just wanted to say thank you again for being such great sports and terrific all around. Stay blessed and hope to see you tomorrow. Bye. He walked out and disappeared into the parking lot like the rest of the troop. Oh my goodness, he's just so dreamy, gushed Casey. I know, looks like Leo DeCap, huh? Added Lizzie. The girls waited 5 more minutes before Casey's father, Juan, showed up in the Buick. Before leaving, the girls approached Marcela. Hey, Marce, my dad's already here for us, informed Casey. Okay, girls, thank you all for your help today. See you bright and early tomorrow, responded Marcela. Both girls walked out of the office building and out towards the LeSabre. Once in the car, another long ride was ahead of them. However, due to the rush hour traffic, the 45-minute drive will now be an hour and a half. Good old Houston traffic between 3 to 8 p.m. How's camp, girls? Asked Juan. Good, puppy, replied Casey. Did you learn any new psalms or prayers today? No, we just helped with getting our guest speakers ready for the performance. A performance? He asked. Well, not a performance, but they did have some fun activities to get the kids interested in camp. Like what? Well, for one, they made a big deal when they were first introducing themselves. One of them even did backflips onto the stage. Oh wow, sounds exciting, mija. Was Lizzie the one backflipping? All 3 began chuckling. No, Lizzie got super shy around her guest speakers and was nervous on stage, teased Casey. There was too many people on stage, rebutted Lizzie. On stage? Did you all perform as well? Asked Mr. Fuentes. No, we just helped the group with their icebreakers activities, or whatever they're called. My boss is making us do those in the seminars lately, Juan mentioned. Really, Mr. Fuentes? Adults have to do weird things like that too? Asked Lizzie. Yes, Lizzie, there are a ton of different icebreakers to play when first meeting new people. Which one did you all play? He asked. Well, we had to stick our hand in a jar filled with colorful milk chocolates, and each color represented a different question, replied Casey. That's a new one. I'll bring it up to my boss. Papi, get your own ideas. Don't be singing praise. Pray? That's the name of our guest speakers group. Pray. Oh, okay. Both Lizzie and Casey stayed staring out the window the remainder of the drive from Houston to New Caney. By the time they arrived home, it was already close to 6:30 p.m. Both girls got dressed in their tracksuits and headed out for a run. They ran down the neighborhood street passing Lizzie's house. Lizzie's parents were outside watering the grass and waved back as the girls ran past them. They made a left at the stop sign and headed out to their street and then onto another beautiful suburb in New Caney. The girls were passing Autumn Leaf Lane. The houses were always still and quiet during sunset. Clashes of red and yellow made a power pink to a soft lavender. The best time to run. No cars, since all the dads and moms who work in the inner Houston area were finally home and indoors with their families. Running in silence had been a favorite pastime for the girls. It helped with clearing their minds and relaxing them, especially after busy days such as today. Track and field always provided an escape for them. It had been a good hour of them running for 4 miles. The girls were cooling down now as they walked down a steep hill back home. That was really cute, eh? Asked Casey. Oh, stop. You're obsessed with him. That's like the billionth time you bring it up today, teased Lizzie. Oh, come on. You know you're thinking it too. Yeah. Besides, I got chisme, girl. Oh, de qué? Of Eddie, of course. What do you mean? Asked Lizzie. Well, after Marcela told us to separate so we can help with the icebreakers, yeah. Well, Edward was helping Pastor Ramiro, and he was standing near me and my group. Okay. And that doesn't mean anything. He wouldn't stop staring at me. So, what is that supposed to mean? And for how long was he staring? Lizzie asked. Well, he wasn't smiling, but he was indeed staring at me. I even turned around to see if anyone was behind me. Oh, but I wonder why he wasn't smiling. Maybe he got so hypnotized by my good looks. Ay, Casey, vanity is a sin. I kid, but how old do you think he is? Too old for us, Lizzie sternly replied. No way, he looks super young, reiterated Casey. I don't know, maybe you should ask him, suggested Lizzie jokingly. Maybe we should on the last day. We? What do you mean, we? I don't even like him that much. Come on, Lizzie. You know I don't like asking guys out alone, begged Casey. Casey, I don't like talking to guys I don't know, period. Especially at church. Like Marcela said, we need to work on our public speaking skills. Well, Casey, please, how is talking to the church cutie a public speaking skill? All I'm saying is that it's good practice for college and getting out of our shells. Well, more like your shell, reminded Casey. Lizzie said. And what are we going to say to him? Hey, Eddie, how old are you? That seems a bit rude, noted Lizzie. Well, that's why we have these next 4 days to slowly work our way up to it. I mean, we are his liaisons. You mean the group's liaisons, corrected Lizzie. You know what I mean. As we help them, we can slowly fish for answers about Edward and his age. Casey gleaned and began pacing ahead of Lizzie. If only you were this clever about Miles in school, said Lizzie. I heard that, shouted Casey. With that concludes the first episode of the 490 event, season 2 kickoff of the Introverted Poets podcast. We just covered the first chapter of summer of 1987. Tune in tomorrow night for chapters 2 and 3. I'm your host and narrator, Ileana Jade, and as always, stay safe out there. Good night. Hello and welcome back to the second night of our 4-night season 2 premiere of the Introverted Poets podcast. I'm your host, Ileana Jade. For those of you just tuning in, the Introverted Poets podcast is a safe space for the shy writer or poet to share their works in an anonymous way. We post the stories or poems 2 weeks in advance. As mentioned in previous episodes, this is done with the intent of getting the audience to read ahead and submit questions to the authors about the story, poems, or them themselves. However, due to this being a 4-night event and the length of the story being long, we won't be having music breaks or Q&As. Regular format will resume next month. Ways to be featured on this podcast will also be posted on this episode description along with our social media links. Now, a recap on the summer of 1997. Last night we found out who the main characters are, the setting, and other minor details. Casey and Lizzie are 2 seniors involved with their church, both Star Trek runners eager to see what the future brings. Tonight we dive into Tuesday and Wednesday. Without further delay, here is part 2 of Summer of 1997. Tuesday, June 10th, 6 a.m. The alarm clock went off again, only this time instead of the hustle and bustle of Casey's house, Lizzie quietly awoke in her bedroom. It was her father's turn to drop the girls off. It was his day to go into the bank. What he did, Lizzie didn't know. All she knew was that he needed to make all of his clients happy and, above all else, richer. Lizzie stepped out of her bed and ran into her bathroom. Lizzie had no siblings. It was just her and her two parents. She began to shower and think about her last failed crush, Julio. He was the star quarterback of the New Caney High School football team. She did everything she could to get him to notice her, but he was far too busy chasing Mary Elizabeth's daughter, Marianne. Rumor had it she was fast, and that's what quarterbacks like. Everyone in high school knew Lizzie to be shy, quiet, timid, and a stickler for rules. Though she was a star track runner, she never broke the rules like most jocks in her school did. She stepped out of the shower and quickly ran to get dressed into her Templo Nuestro polo and jeans. Once dressed, she ran downstairs to the smell of coffee. "Hey, kiddo," greeted Hector Castro. "Hey, Daddy. Do you think Casey's ready so we can get some McDonald's for breakfast? My treat." "I don't know, Daddy. Let's find out." Lizzie picked up the cordless phone and dialed Casey's house number. "Buenos dias, Maria. Do you think Casey's ready? My papi wants to take us to McDonald's." Okay. We will be waiting." Casey was brushing her teeth, thinking about ways to approach Edward without making it too obvious that she was crushing on him. There was a knock on the door. "Mija? Mande, Mommy. Are you ready? Mr. Castro's going to take you girls to McDonald's for breakfast. I made you breakfast and packed it up still, in case you girls need a snack, later." "Gracias, Mommy." And hash browns. "Órale, mamita, get a moving." Casey grabbed her backpack by the door and the lunch bag her mom had left. "Bye, Mommy, la miro al rato," she shouted. She quickly made her way towards the Castro's driveway. Lizzie and Hector were already waiting in the Acura Integra. "Buenos dias, Mr. Castro," Casey greeted. "Buenos dias, Casey. Buckle up and let's get some Mickey D's," he cheerfully stated. Mr. Castro pulled out of the driveway and made his way towards the McDonald's near the Highway 59 before heading towards the long 45-minute commute. It was 6:55 a.m. "We are making good time," Mr. Castro said. "Only because Casey was miraculously ready today," teased Lizzie. Both girls giggled as Mr. Castro began ordering the Egg McMuffins and drinks. Once arriving at Templo Nuestro, the girls had finished eating their breakfast and joyfully made their way to the lounge. They got there an hour earlier than usual, 8:25 a.m. to be exact. "Good thing we have time to kill," said Casey. "Do you think your boyfriend is here yet?" wondered Lizzie. "He's not my boyfriend. Yet." The door opened and in walked Mary Elizabeth and her daughter Marianne. "Good morning, girls," loudly stated Mary Elizabeth. "Good morning, Mary Elizabeth," they both greeted. "You all know my precious daughter, Marianne. Y'all go to school together in New Caney." "Yes, Mary Elizabeth," both girls responded. "Well, today she's joining you all and helping out with the guest speakers while other peers your age are going to help the pastors out in the lunch line. Marianne and I will meet back with y'all in a few minutes." They both walked out. Once the door closed, both Lizzie and Casey looked at each other. "Ugh, she better not try talking to Edward," Casey angrily stated. "Wow, isn't that a bit much, Casey? You know how she is. She took Julio from you." Lizzie winced at hearing Casey say that out loud. "Sorry, didn't mean to offend you, but you know how she is. Loose." "You think she got in trouble and that's why she's here?" asked Lizzie. "Why else would she be here? She makes us church girls look bad," commented Casey. "Okay, you need to chill out. We all know if Marianne is here, then Julio and his friends will be here because where every Mary goes, the lamb is sure to follow," sang Lizzie to the tune of "Mary Had a Little Lamb." Both girls began bursting out into laughter when Isaiah and the rest of the troupe walked in. "Good morning, Lizzie and Casey, the superstar liaisons." "Good morning, Isaiah," the girls greeted. "I'm hoping the good Lord woke you all blessed," inquired Hannah. "Every day awake above ground is a blessed day," responded Lizzie. "Amen to that," added Edward, who was walking in giggling next to Sarah and Joanna. Josh slowly came in behind the trio, while both Casey and Lizzie stood next to each other, passing quick glances at one another. "So I hear today we'll be having more teen youth leaders helping us out," Isaiah stated. "Oh yes," answered Casey. "Will they also be our liaisons?" asked Joshua. "We don't know. Maybe Mary Elizabeth or Marcela know," suggested Lizzie. "Who is Mary Elizabeth?" asked Sarah. "Oh, Pastor Lynn's wife," answered Casey. "Oh, right. Silly me, forgetting that." She mentioned it with a smile on her face. Once more, Mary Elizabeth walked in, this time with more than just Marianne. She brought in her 2 sons, Evan and Henry, along with Marianne's friends who also happened to be in the cheer squad. Catherine Wheeler, 5'5", skinny with pink braces. Lynn Marie Marquardt, also 5'5", but with no braces, a curvy build. Leslie Windsor, 5 foot, the shortest of the group of the girls. And Peggy Lace, the tallest, a 5'10" with long, wavy hair. Marianne and her friends all looked alike. Light blonde hair, always wore lip gloss and other makeup, and the innest clothing. Being cheerleaders, they had to be the trendsetters of New Caney High. However, being the leader of the group, Marianne stood out by adding pink highlights to her hair. Behind them was Julio, the tall, tan Latino star quarterback, and his fellow friends. Jason Von Holtz, 6'3" with long, dirty blonde hair, the linebacker. Marcus DeWare, the safety, 6'3", darkened with a buzz cut. Mario Benavides, the kicker, 5'6", tan with a gel to spike his hair. And Michael Smith, 5'10", blonde and fair skinned, the center. He wasn't as blonde as Jason, but blonde nonetheless. A jock for every cheerleader, it seemed. Much to Casey's relief, this meant Edward was all hers for the taking. "Good morning, Isaiah and Troop," Mary Elizabeth greeted. "Good morning, Mrs. Glenn." "Ho, ho, please, call me Mary Elizabeth like everyone else, darling," she commanded. "What's on the itinerary today?" he asked. "Well, today you are going to have these 8 lovely assistants along with Casey and Lizzie to help you all with morning prayer, Bible trivia, lunch, your skits, and all that other activities," she cheerfully instructed. "Oh, wow, you know about our skits?" Isaiah asked. "Why, yes, Edward told us all about it last night when we had him over for dinner." The air left Casey when she heard Mary Elizabeth say that. She quickly shot a quick glance at Lizzie, and Lizzie in return raised her eyebrows to confirm that she indeed heard what she heard. "Anyway, I'll be needing 4 of you to find Pastor Glenn to assist with the breakfast line, 2 to help me unload the stuff, and the other 2 can stay here with Lizzie and Casey," Mary and Elizabeth added, while looking at the group. "All right, Marianne and Catherine, you stay with Lizzie and Casey, and you 4, she pointed to Julio and his friends, go help Pastor Glenn. And the rest of you, follow me." Catherine and Marianne stayed staring at Casey and Lizzie, scanning them up and down. "Good morning, girls," greeted Lizzie. "Hey, nerds," accosted Marianne while Catherine was snickering behind her. "Nerds?" repeated Lizzie. "What are y'all doing or what?" demanded Marianne. "We are helping pray with whatever they need," replied Casey. "Oh, so like they're slaves?" asked Catherine. "No, not like that. We are more like lamos," Marianne teased, causing Catherine to giggle once more. "Well, at least some of us are here because we genuinely care about getting right with the Lord instead of boys," added Lizzie sternly, to which wiped a smirk off of both Marianne's and Catherine's faces. Marianne took a step closer towards Lizzie. "Look, nerd, don't think I don't know that you have a thing for my boyfriend Julio. The way you get all gaga-eyed for him when he walks into 5th period." "Yeah," sneered Catherine. "And remember, Lizzie, or whatever the hell your name is, I am the queen of this church and the school, and I can make your life a living hell this senior year," threatened Marianne. "You don't scare us, floozy," added Casey, quickly interfering and creating space between Lizzie and Marianne. Just then, Edward and Joshua approached the 4 girls. "Hey, girls, what's all the fuss about?" Edward nervously asked. "Oh, nothing, Eddie, just talking about how fun and scrumptious dinner was last night," cheerfully responded Marianne. "Oh, yeah, it was. You and your mom make the best pies ever," he exclaimed. "Anytime, Eddie. Is there anything you need our help with?" she asked. "Oh, well, Joanna, Hannah, and Sarah are going to need you to help them make the cue cards for Bible trivia," he stated. He then walked Marianne towards the back table where the 3 prayer girls were at quietly writing. "Can I help?" shouted Catherine as she ran behind Edward and Marianne. "Well, you girls can help make the prize bags for the winners of the trivia," instructed Josh. "Okay," agreed Casey. The 3 walked to the opposite side of the lounge and began making prize bags with movie passes to Blockbuster and popcorn. Josh stood up and walked out, leaving Casey and Lizzie alone, while the other members were across the lounge quietly working. "Oh, that bitch," whispered Casey. "Language," reminded Lizzie. "I can't help it. She's making it seem like her and Edward are a thing while rubbing Julio in your face," declared Casey.
calm down. One, if Julio liked me back, he would have asked me out instead of the answers for the algebra quizzes, and Edward is too old for us, explained Lizzie. You don't know that. For all we know, she is a witch and is doing brujeria on them, theorized Casey. Marianne, as in the pastor's daughter, head of the cheerleading squad? No way! She's a lot of things, but not a bruja, Lizzie stated. More like head of giving head, jested Casey. Casey! Lizzie unknowingly shouted. The prey members and two bullies all turned around and looked at Lizzie in Casey's direction. Sorry, Lizzie blurted. Everyone turned around and quietly went back to working on the things they were instructed to do before morning prayer and Bible trivia. The girls took 15 minutes to make the 3 prize bags. Once they were done, Isaiah approached them once more. Hey, what are my 2 liaisons doing? He inquired. Just finished the prize bags for Bible trivia, answered Lizzie. Okay, now, if you don't mind, can one of you get me some markers? These dry erase ones have dried up, he politely asked. Of course, I'll get them, volunteered Casey. Casey stood up and walked out of the lounge and into Marcela's office. She always had the office supplies locked up in the closet. You couldn't get any new supplies without Marcela knowing about it. While Casey was gone, Lizzie sat at the table observing the room. At the far end of the room, Marianne and Catherine were chatting away while organizing the index cards with the women from Prey. Josh had still not returned, and Isaiah was erasing the dry erase board from the day before. She was quietly thinking about what the rest of the summer was going to hold for her. She was startled by the movement of the chair next to her. She let out a gasp. Oh my goodness me, I didn't mean to scare you, Lizzie, apologized Edward. Mercy me, no, don't worry about it, she assured him. What are you thinking about? I hope it's the songs we are going to sing once it's 10 a.m., he teased. Oh, no, she responded. Then about what? About summer. I take it you and the other youth leaders are all seniors in high school? Yeah, that's the only way we can be youth leaders. Oh, wow. That and good grades and being good, added Lizzie. Right. I remember when I was a senior. A very long time ago, Edward joked. How long ago was that? Cried Lizzie. 3 years ago, he replied. How old are you, if you don't mind me asking? I'm super old, he said. I'm 21. 21 is not old. That's the dream age, replied Lizzie. Dream? How come? He wondered. Well, you can buy alcohol and go out dancing, explained Lizzie. True, but you don't have to be any age to pray to the Lord, he reminded. Fair point, she agreed. The door to the lounge flung open and in came Casey with the expo markers for Isaiah. She quickly spotted Edward sitting next to Lizzie and immediately smiled. Why do they call you Lizzie? He asked. To avoid confusion between her and Mary Elizabeth, interjected Casey. Oh, answered Edward. Yeah, confirmed Lizzie. So have you girls attended this church all your lives? He asked. Yes, since we can remember, responded Casey. We moved into the same neighborhood as Casey's back when we were in diapers, added Lizzie. Oh, okay, he remarked. Yeah, my parents befriended Lizzie's parents and the rest is history, detailed Casey. I see, so you both are in the same grade, I imagine. Yes, both of us seniors and both of us track runners. That's amazing. I did track back in my day, he boasted. Really? Casey cheerfully asked. Yes, if you girls need any pointers on nutrition and increasing miles, let me know, he offered. Oh yes, most definitely. We will definitely ask, coyly responded Casey. I'll be glad to help, he exclaimed. In walked Mary Elizabeth with Pastor Glenn and Joshua. Okay, ladies and gents, it's time to go in and begin morning prayer, instructed Pastor Glenn. That's right, y'all. Let's all line up and get ready to be filled with the Spirit, chimed Mary Elizabeth with a big white smile. Are we ready? Asked Josh to the troop. Just about. I still need to finish this whiteboard, explained Isaiah. Oh, well, have someone stay behind and do it, mentioned Joshua. That's a terrific idea, added Mary Elizabeth. I know. How about Marianne, Kat, and Eddie stay and finish the categories, and the rest of you line up and follow us? Once more, Casey felt her blood boil hearing Mary Elizabeth was desperately throwing Marianne at her Edward. Keep a lid on it, Case. We need her to sign her community service hours. That's 300 hours and another cord for graduation, reminded Lizzie. But they're both so awful, complained Casey. I doubt they even know a thing. I doubt your husband even knows, giggled Lizzie. Both girls giggled as they walked behind the troop and church elders. Morning prayers went off without a hitch. Isaiah, Joanna, Sarah, Hannah, and Joshua assisted the pastors in getting the kids to pray and sing the psalms and hymns with them. They even played a Jeopardy-style game, but with prayers. The children had to answer, "What is the Book of John?" as opposed to, "What is Mount Rushmore?" Rather than having a real buzzer, the members of the troop took turns being the winning bell or the losing buzzer. These activities were 45 minutes long. By the time it was 11:15 a.m., the pastors and troop made the children exercise. They let out basketballs, volleyball nets, and rackets. The children had 45 minutes to play before lunchtime. While the children were playing, Casey and Lizzie were sitting beside the stage talking. "So, you found out how old he is?" Casey asked. "Yeah," confirmed Lizzie. "How?" "Don't you want to know how old he is?" argued Lizzie. "Yeah, but you're a wallflower. How did you begin talking to him?" wondered Casey. "I didn't. He just sat down next to me and began talking," explained Lizzie. "Okay, so more details, please," Casey pleaded. "Well, that he was also a track runner in high school and that he's 21. 21 and a track runner? This is too perfect," Casey beamed. "Calm down. He's still too old for us," insisted Lizzie. "No, the age of consent is 17 in Texas," informed Casey. "Which we're not yet," reminded Lizzie. "But we will be. And how are you going to go about keeping in contact with him after Friday? Remember, they're just visiting for the week," asked Lizzie. "I don't know. I'll think of something," plotted Casey. "Well, you got 3 more days unless you want to befriend Mary Ann," implied Lizzie. "Hell no," bellowed Casey. "Casey!" "But she and Mary Elizabeth are providing room and board for him," reminded Lizzie. "Don't they live close by the house?" asked Casey. No, Lizzie stammered. Yes, refuted Casey. "What now, Casey?" asked Lizzie. "Look, just hear me out. We go jogging by their house on our run, and they will see us, and Edward's going to run out and propose to you like those books your mom reads?" sarcastically interrupted Lizzie. "Well, hopefully." "Casey, estás pero bien loca," noted Lizzie. "Is that a yes?" "Yeah, only because I'm getting bored running in the same place," agreed Lizzie. "Deal." Later that day, 3 p.m. came and the buses that took the children to Houston and its surrounding cities were back. Casey and the rest of the youth leaders helped the pastors load the children onto their buses. With more youth leaders to help with Pastor Glenn's 2 sons, this made the process faster. The children remembered their buddies and bus numbers. By 3:55 p.m., the last bus had left. "Phew," sighed Casey. "Let's go inside. It's so humid," added Lizzie. "Houston for you," blurted Casey. No kidding. Both girls walked into the administration building and sat in the lobby waiting for Casey's dad once again. Even though both fathers alternated as to who dropped the girls off in the morning for camp or school, when it came time for pickup, Casey's dad was usually the one to do the chauffeuring. Casey's dad, LeSabre, pulled up. Again, Casey informed Marcela that she was to be leaving along with Lizzie as per usual. Both girls made their way towards the car until they heard giggling. They turned to their right as they were about to open the car doors. It was Mary Ann and Catherine giggling while talking to Edward. "Remember the plan," mentioned Casey as she got into the front passenger seat. "Hola, girls. ¿Cómo les fue hoy?" inquired Juan. "Bien, papi." "Fine, Mr. Fuentes." "Lizzie, you're part of my family. You can call me Juan." "Oh, no. My mother and father wouldn't allow me to be disrespectful," reasoned Lizzie. "It's not disrespectful. You all are family." Once home, the girls again changed into their tracksuits with a little more vigor. This time they had a mission to accomplish. They needed to get Edward to notice Casey more than Mary Ann. Both girls began jogging out of their cul-de-sac and past Autumn Lane. This time, instead of making a right onto Autumn Oak Lane, they made a left onto Winter Lane. "Do you know where this little whatever rhymes with witch lives?" inquired Casey. "Yeah," blurted Lizzie. "How?" "When I came cruising with my dad once," answered Lizzie. "Cool." Truth is, Lizzie had been there because, unbeknownst to Casey, she and Evan had a secret fling going on. No one knew, of course. Lizzie had been quietly sneaking out and meeting Evan at the end of Winter Lane. He would park his car and wait for Lizzie to arrive. Once Lizzie arrived, she'd strap herself and he'd drive to his house and sneak her into the outhouse. The outhouse had a pool table, bar, and a big screen TV for men to watch the Texans play. However, past 12 p.m., when everyone was asleep, it was Evan and Lizzie's love nest. "Now up this corner," instructed Lizzie. The girls made another left onto Fall Avenue. The houses were all gated with the latest luxury cars 1997 could have. Both girls felt outranked the closer they got to Pastor Glenn's house. Of course, being head of the church, his house wasn't a house, but an estate. It took up an entire block and, of course, was gated with the tallest fences. Not very Christian-like, eh? Don't start, Casey. Now, where do you think they'd be? Pondered Casey out loud. I don't know, but keep up pace or else we will look suspicious. We have to act as if we are just prepping for track, commanded Lizzie. Well, Lizzie, for the quiet one, you seem to be pretty in your element here, noted Casey. Shh, hissed Lizzie. The girls continued jogging. They went past the estate and onto a neighboring street, Springtime Lane. Not only did it increase their miles, it killed time since it appeared no one was home at the estate. They passed another 2 streets before they decided to run back towards the estate and back home. Okay, huffed Casey. Let's slowly make our way back so I don't look too bad when we see Edward. Alrighty, responded Lizzie. As they were turning around, making their way back towards the second street they passed, they heard a rustling in the bushes. Both girls turned and saw Edward sprinting towards them. Oh my god, oh my god, oh my god, panicked Casey. Language, hissed Lizzie. Edward finally caught up to the girls and stopped, covered in sweat, running shorts, and no shirt. Liaisons? Hi, Eddie, greeted Casey. Hi, Edward, peeped Lizzie. What are you girls doing here? He inquired. We are upping our mileage for track, Casey confidently answered. Oh, okay, he breathed. I also live close by here. Well, we live close by, answered Casey emphatically. Okay, neighbors, right? He asked. I remember you all telling me. Yes, Lizzie sheepishly stated. You girls heading back home? He asked. Yes, we are, answered Lizzie. Would you like to join us on our run back? It's not too far from here, suggested Casey. Nah, maybe some other time. It's almost supper time at Pastor Glenn's. I don't want to be rude. I gotta wash up, he informed. Oh, okay, Casey disappointedly answered. Well, I gotta go. Bye, girls. Edward sprinted off to the direction of the estate. Not exactly as you planned it, Lizzie asked. Oh, shut up. He didn't say no, just maybe. Maybe's just as good as no, cautioned Lizzie. Stop it. Let's get back home, ordered Casey. Race you there? Asked Lizzie. All right, but don't be upset when I win, mentioned Casey. One of these days you won't always win, warned Lizzie. Well, until then. Ready, set, go. And both girls took off sprinting back towards their homes on Autumn Lane. This time Casey only beat Lizzie by 5 seconds. Nice try, Lizzie, Casey breathed. I'm telling you, I'll be getting there soon, threatened Lizzie. No kidding. We'll see you tomorrow in the morning for camp, departed Casey. Both girls parted ways. Lizzie crossed the street and Casey went indoors. It was dusk and time for the girls to wash up for bed and prep for their 3rd day of camp. Wednesday. Girls were waiting in the lounge. It was 8:30 a.m. The troop usually arrived at 9 and morning prayers began at 10. What do you think the troop has planned for today? Asked Lizzie. I don't know, but it's probably going to be something fun, Casey said. Why do you say that? Remember all the camps before? The closer it got to Friday, the funner the activities got, reminded Casey. Do you think there will be a dance again this year? Asked Lizzie. You mean the concert? Asked Casey. Yeah, well, it starts out as a concert and then it turns into a huge dance, asserted Lizzie. Well, the music is fun, and after a week of learning, some play will do you some good. True, so what's the plan for today? Asked Lizzie. Plan? You know, to get your lover boy, reminded Lizzie. Oh, that, remembered Casey. I don't know. I think I'm just going to give up on that. I'm telling you, he's too old for us. Probably why he's not interested. Well, too old for you, specified Lizzie. The door flung open and the troop walked in. It was 8:35 a.m. Who's too old for you girls? Asked Isaiah jokingly. Oh, no one, Casey quickly added while turning red. Is somebody crushing on somebody at camp? Teased Hannah. No, nothing like that, peeped Lizzie. A boy from school? Asked Edward. Oh no, definitely not a boy from school, flirtatiously replied Casey. Well, whoever he is, I hope he is right with the Lord and going to pray away the drugs, shouted Joshua. Both girls looked at each other confused. Oh, you don't know? Asked Sarah. No, what? It's what our troop specializes in, added Joanna. Pray is a group designed to inform children about the dangers of taking drugs, explained Isaiah. We do songs, skits, games, and dances to inform the impressionable youth about the dangers of marijuana, cocaine, and today's hot topic, ecstasy. Oh, okay, both girls answered. So after morning prayer, we will begin with a puppet show on how Pepito and Maria are offered a joint by a thug hanging in the neighborhood while ditching school, explained Edward. And you need someone to help you with the puppets, wondered Casey. Oh, no, you all don't know the script. Sarah and I will be Pepito and Maria. You girls will be helping make the set changes, said Edward. Oh, said Casey. Set changes? You know, the backgrounds you see in plays, explained Edward once more. Oh, okay, I mean, Lizzie and I are in one-act play. We could learn lines, Casey stated. Really? Track stars and actresses? My, I'm starting to sense you all are extremely talented. However, the skits are already in place. We just had the weather damage our cardboard set, so we gotta get new ones with box cutters for you girls to make. Oh, okay, Casey disappointedly answered. Marcela walked in with boxes full of supplies. Once 9 a.m. came, Mary Elizabeth, Mary Ann, Catherine, Evan, and Henry walked in. The others had their spots from yesterday. These four will be helping you all with your sets as discussed last night, Edward and Isaiah, instructed Mary Elizabeth. Mary Elizabeth walked out. Catherine and Mary Ann ran up to Edward and encircled him with Sarah, all giggling. This drove Casey mad. Lizzie had come up from behind Casey with a box of supplies. Hey girl, let's get started. Isaiah said he needed a set to have trees and clouds. What? Drawing is fun for us, Lizzie pleaded. No, not that. That, Casey emphasized while pointing at the girls encircling Edward. Casey, ignore them. He's too old for them too. Besides, Marian is with Julio, and it's not just him going to dinner with them. Remember what Mary Elizabeth said. Isaiah is apparently also staying at the estate. Heck, they probably all are, judging by how huge it is, reasoned Lizzie. You're right, but still, I feel like she somehow knows I like him and is doing it on purpose. Kind of like what she did with Julio and Casey. Not this again, stated Lizzie. She cut out a giant square in the middle of the cardboard box meant for the puppets to be seen. You know what she did was super wrong, right? Pretending to be your friend so you could tutor her for algebra and you telling her who you liked, and bam! A few weeks later, she and Julio are an item. Lower your voice, Casey. I don't want them to start, begged Lizzie. Whatever, she's a floozy and she knows it, insisted Casey. Draw the clouds before you draw the trees, ordered Lizzie. Oh, hush it. I'm just saying. Marianne has a record, declared Casey. A record of doing what? Asked Marianne suddenly behind Casey. Casey turned around and faced Marianne. A record of being a two-faced snake, sassed Casey. A two-faced snake? Me? Shouted Marianne, who shoved Casey. Casey in turn shoved Marianne back, and before Marianne could come closer to Casey with her open hand, Edward and Isaiah got between the girls. Whoa, what's going on here? Asked Isaiah. She's calling me names, answered Marianne, who was pretending to tear up. Well, maybe if you weren't such a two-faced bitch, bellowed Casey. Language, shouted everyone in the lounge. Well, she put her hands on me first, reminded Casey. I was only defending myself. I will not be hearing another word of this, stated Marcela, who was still in the room. Both of you, to my office, immediately. You sure you want them going in together? Warned Isaiah. You're right. Isaiah, escort Marianne. I'll be with Casey. The rest of you get back to work, she barked. Isaiah escorted Marianne out of the lounge and Marcela walked behind Marianne, but in front of Casey. Lizzie was left alone to work on the backdrop for one of the skits. She felt bad she couldn't prevent the fight. She began coloring the cardboard blue, then spray painting white puffy cotton-looking clouds. So, I take it Marianne isn't very popular, a male voice whispered. Huh? Lizzie responded, startled, and accidentally sprayed white onto Edward's black tennis shoe. Oh my gosh, I am so sorry, she quavered. No, don't worry, these shoes are old anyway, he reassured her. He kneeled down beside her. What are you working on? The sunny day for Pepito and Maria, Lizzie explained. Ah, let me help you there since your partner's busy at the moment, he volunteered. Yeah, I told her to just help me, but am I right? Is Marianne mean? He asked again. Why would you ask that? She responded. Well, I saw the tension yesterday and now today, Edward reasoned. That obvious, huh? Yeah. Care to share more? He wondered. I don't know, Edward. I wouldn't feel right telling you about Casey and Marianne, for that matter. It's okay, I understand. Now, let's add the tree on here. Here is the green and the brown spray cans. Wow, You're a really talented painter.
Thank you, Lizzie nervously replied.
So I take it you're the shy one and Casey's the fiery one, sensed the Sandbot. That's amazing that your friendship has lasted this long. Will you be two going to the same college?
Hopefully. We haven't begun applying yet.
Well, you should. You don't want to be like me, 21 and barely working on your basics.
Edward added the finishing touches to the set.
He then walked towards Sarah and began rehearsing his lines. Mary Elizabeth walked in and motioned for Catherine to go outside with her.
10:45 a.m.
Though challenging and a bit stressful, Lizzie was able to finish 3 out of 5 sets needed for the puppet skits. Luckily, Joanna, Hannah, and Joshua helped with the remaining 2. Sarah finished sewing up loose ends for the puppets. They knew after another game of Bible trivia and lunch the show would be going on. "Okay," loud male voice said. Everyone looked up and saw that it was the head of the church, Pastor Glenn, with Pastor Gilbert and Pastor Ramiro. "We will be missing 3 liaisons for the time being, but it's time to do some more Bible trivia before lunch. Let's get on out there." "Will we be giving out prizes this time? I didn't work on them," asked Lizzie. "No, we got that covered, Lizzie. Don't worry about it. You just go out there and have fun," suggested Pastor Gilberto. "Where is Isaiah?" asked Joshua. "He's handling some paperwork. He will catch up with us," informed Pastor Glenn. "Paperwork? But Casey didn't start a fight. It was Mary Ann," argued Lizzie. "Now, Lizzie, we need any more witnesses, we will ask you," stated Pastor Glenn. "But you only took Catherine in and not me." "Look at the time," shouted Pastor Ramiro. "Let's get going." He opened the door and motioned for the rest of the troop to walk out. They all lined up single file and walked out of the lounge. Lizzie was stunned at how blatant favoritism was happening at Templo Nuestro. She knew that Mary Ann probably made up a lie about Casey, and Catherine would always agree with her. However, knowing that she needed both Pastor Glenn's and Mary Elizabeth's signatures for the community service hours, she decided to wait to see what Casey would say at home. She walked out with the troop behind Pastor Glenn. Before she got into the assembly building, Pastor Gilbert pulled her aside. "Look, kiddo, I know what you're thinking. I know how you're feeling, and I know what's going on," he quietly consulted. "So what's going to happen to Casey? This is the first time she's ever gotten into trouble, and we need her community service and letters of recommendation." "It will be fine. Being that it's her first offense, she will most likely just be asked to go home for the day or just be in the office. Don't worry, it's barely summer. You all still have time to get more community service hours. You all don't graduate until May anyway. And as for those letters of recommendation, you also have me and Lucinda, Pastor Manuel, Marcela, Pastor Ramiro, and other members of the congregation," he assured her. Seeing the look of relief on Lizzie's face made Pastor Gilberto smile. They both walked into the assembly area and made their way backstage. Once there, the prayer group were all paired up and in separate groups. Edward and Sarah were rehearsing more lines with their puppets. Joanna and Isaiah were going over a dance, while Hannah and Joanna watched them for mistakes. "There you are." Lizzie turned and saw Pastor Glenn and Pastor Ramiro. "Come, let's get the backdrops organized." Lizzie quickly ran and began helping them set up the sunny day backdrop, the school bus backdrop, the home setting, the neighborhood, and so on as those plays go about saying no to drugs. Once she and the other pastors had them set, Isaiah, the leader of the troop, came up to them. "So we have the sets in order. Sunny day, school bus, home, neighborhood?" he asked.
"Sure thing, my man," replied Pastor Ramiro.
The troop went on stage after Pastor Glenn ended Bible trivia. The last prize had been handed out by Mary Elizabeth and Mary Ann, who were on the opposite side of the stage. Lizzie ignored them and focused on making sure the sets remained in touch. The troop went on with their dancing and tricks as per usual. The children in the camp would cheer even louder every time Edward did a breakdancing move or if Joanna did a backflip. After 3 minutes of dancing to Christian power music, Isaiah took the mic and began speaking. "Okay, boys and girls of Templo Nuestro Church, fans of the Houston Rockets, today we'll be talking about something serious," to which all the children gasped. Now, it's not too bad, but it's about saying no to drugs, which is what prayer is all about. It's about praying away the drugs. Not only are we going to teach you to say no to them, but we're also going to teach you how to pray for others that are addicted to them. All the children cheered and applauded for this. What we have planned for you today is these fun skits that our troop put together. Isaiah turned and looked at Lizzie. "Oh no," she whispered. Joshua, Hannah, and Joanna all walked to the side of the stage where Lizzie was standing with the backdrops. "We will be taking these out of your hands," conveyed Joanna. "God bless you," added Joshua.
The troupe moved the first set out onto the stage, and Edward and Sarah went behind the box and under the line of vision from the cutout square in the middle. A white-skinned-looking puppet with black hair and 2 black buttons for eyes, wearing a red shirt, popped up. A second tan puppet with brown buttons for eyes and a green polo popped up. "Hey there, Maria, did you finish the homework?" spoke Edward, modifying his voice. "Yes, Pepito, I did. How about you?" responded Sarah, who also modified her voice. No, I didn't. Why not, Pepito? The teacher's gonna get mad." "Well, last night my parents were having a carne asada." He paused and all the children in the crowd cheered. "As I was sitting there, my primo Tomas was hanging out with the neighborhood boys and they offered me a sip of alcohol." "You had a beer?" "Yes." "Are we allowed to drink beer?" "We're only in the 4th grade." "I don't know, but Tomas and the cool kids of the barrio were drinking, so I joined them." The backdrop changed from the sunny park scene to the scene on the bus, then into the classroom and etc. At the end of Pepito and Maria's day, they were back at the same backdrop from the beginning, the park, only this time there was a 3rd puppet there. "Wow, after the firefighter came to talk to us today, I am never drinking a beer or doing drugs. It's not what God wants either," stated Pepito. "Me either," added Maria. "Yo, niño," said the strange 3rd hoodlum-looking puppet with baggy pants and chains. "Hello," they both answered. "You want to try some marijuanas?" "Is that a drug?" asked Pepito. "Yes," answered Maria. "Remember Firefighter Murphy said that marijuana was the drug that leads to other drugs? Gate something?" "Oh, right," remembered Pepito. "Firefighter Murphy's a nerd." "No one cares about what nerds say," said the 3rd nefarious puppet while approaching Pepito and Maria. "Say no to drugs and peer pressure," reminded Maria. The skit stopped. Edward, Sarah, and Joshua popped out from behind the cardboard box and stepped in front of it. Isaiah, Joanna, and Hannah joined them on stage. "Now, boys and girls," remarked Isaiah, "were Pepito and Maria right about saying no to drugs?" "Yes," they all shouted in unison. "What else could they have done after running away from the 3rd puppet?" Various children began to shout different answers. "Call 911! Call Captain Murphy!" Those are all good answers, boys and girls. But what they should also do is pray. "Oh," they all shouted. "Now we are going to do some role-playing activities where one of you will come on stage and pretend to be like Maria and Pepito, and one of us will pretend to be the gang member. But remember, it's just pretend. We're just acting, so don't go out in public and have security at the mall chase us." All the children began to laugh. "Now who wants to volunteer?" asked Isaiah. "Me," they shouted, and several hands shot up in the air. Lizzie was watching but couldn't help but feel eyes on her. She turned around and saw Evan standing behind her. "Oh, Jesus, you scared me," she whispered. "Don't take the Lord's name in vain," he demanded. "How have you been?" Good. Just wondering when you'd be ready to." "You know," hinted Evan. "Evan, we made a promise to God and Jesus that we would wait until marriage," pleaded Lizzie. "Yeah, but that's for our boyfriends and girlfriends. You and I are neither of those things. Besides, don't you want to go with experience to college?" Evan asked. But before Lizzie could answer, the music of Bonnie Tyler's Total Eclipse of the Heart began playing. Lizzie and Evan both turned around and looked out onto the stage. The prayer group began what was an interpretive dance. It started with Joanna and the other group members all wearing backpacks and pretending to be in school. Then it turned to Sarah and Edward using drugs. "Once upon a time there was light in my life, but now there's only love in the dark." Edward's character overcame the drug addiction, but Sarah didn't, and she died. The rest of the troupe carried her in what looked like a casket on stage to the breakdown of the song. The song ended, and the six stayed looking somber. Sarah then popped out of the casket, and the mood turned from a somber one to a cheerful one once again. "Okay, now you see why doing drugs is bad?" asked Isaiah. "Yes," again they shouted. "Now, can anyone tell me what we call in when a friend keeps on suggesting you drink some alcohol or marijuana?" Oh, me, said a little boy in the front row. Pastor Gilberto ran to him and handed the microphone. It's called peer pressure. Very good. Here's praise shirt from us, gushed Isaiah. Edward ran towards the little boy in the crowd and handed him the shirt. Now another question for another prize, boys and girls. What else are we supposed to do besides saying no to drugs? It's something firefighters do before they rush into a burning building, Joanna hinted. Oh, I know, shouted a little girl in the far back. Pastor Emmanuel, who had been missing up until now, ran towards her with the microphone in hand. They pray. Excellent, shouted Joanna. Here's a shirt for you. She tossed it towards Pastor Emmanuel, who caught it and handed it to the little girl. All right, boys and girls, we are handing paper and pencils out. If you notice on the paper, it says, I blank pledge to not only say no to drugs, but also pledge to pray for those afflicted by drug addiction for them to go away, instructed Isaiah. This will be the end of the skits and lessons from us today, boys and girls. Tomorrow we will be having a special comedy hour by Edward. Between Bible trivia, lunch, the improv group skits, dances, Q&A, and now pledge signing, it was already 3 p.m. Lizzie wondered where Casey was. Marianne was allowed to come back, and from the stage vantage point, she was able to spot Catherine, Wheeler, and the other minions as well, collecting pledges from the children. So you want to meet tonight, Liz? Whispered Evan. Huh? I said if you wanted to meet tonight. You know, repeated Evan. I don't know, Evan. We have to be up early again tomorrow for the 4th day. Oh, come on. It's not going to hurt. I promise. I'll go gentle. What's not going to hurt? Evan let out a frustrated sigh when Edward walked backstage. Hey, Liaison and Evan, my man, he greeted with a special handshake only fraternity brothers would ever give each other. So what's going on the agenda for tonight at your place? My place? Asked Lizzie. Oh, no, sorry, Lizzie. I was asking Evan, clarified Edward. Ah, Lizzie was red in the face. Nothing, man. My dad was going to fire up the grill and, watch the Rockets take the Spurs. Cool, but hey, man, I'm a Spurs fan since I'm from South Texas, said Edward. Houston represent, shouted Evan. Will you be jogging again, Lizzie? Asked Edward. Lizzie stammered while turning red once more. Jogging on by? Asked Evan. Oh, yeah, I forgot to tell you. Casey and Lizzie yesterday were jogging down the street and I bumped into them, explained Edward. Really? Asked Evan while looking at Lizzie. Is that your usual jogging route? Never seen you running there. Well, it's just that Casey wanted to try a new route, Lizzie explained. Uh-huh, replied Evan. Yeah, nice neighborhood to run in as well, she confirmed. Funny. Why is it funny? Asked Edward. It's funny because I've known Lizzie and Casey all my life and I've never known them to jog near the house, stated Evan. No way, laughed Edward. Way, exclaimed Evan. Feeling the wind escape her, Lizzie stood frozen with her mouth open. She couldn't believe what Evan had just said. How did he know? Edward, come here, shouted Sarah. We'll catch you later, my man. I gotta see what my girl wants, said Edward while exiting the awkward situation between the three of them. So, do you, Lizzie? Do I what? Do you have the hots for Edward? What? I want answers. That's none of your concern, since like you said, we aren't boyfriend and girlfriend. Lizzie angrily stormed out of the assembly hall for fresh air. She did not want to help with buses. She did not feel like facing Marianne or her entourage. She didn't want to see Evan, and she didn't want to be anywhere near the troop. In fact, the troop was the group she wanted to be the furthest from. She let out a profound sigh and walked towards the back of the administration building. She knew further back there was a creek. When she needed to escape and pray, Lizzie would walk to the creek and sit. The creek had dirt trails covered in rocks and bushes. The trees worked as curtains to block out anyone from looking in. She loved being behind the veil and looking from the inside out. As she began walking into the creek, she heard rustling noises coming from the bushes. Feeling brave, she walked towards the noise and found Edward pulling his pants up. Oh my God, Lizzie shouted. Fuck, he shouted. What are you doing? How long have you been standing there, he asked. I asked first, she stated. Now, Elizabeth, calm down. Only my father calls me that. You don't get to. Okay. Now, easy. What are you doing? Look, I was waiting on Sarah and she was taking too long. So, you and Sarah are a thing? Yeah, well, not official, and you're having premarital sex? Now, Lizzie, no human is perfect. Feeling her heart racing to her chest, she saw Edward's lips still moving but heard nothing he said. So then she said, let's go do something romantic, and I thought this was the romantic spot. Okay, uttered Lizzie in disbelief. Lizzie, are you ever going to look me in the eye again? It's just, Lizzie, you can't tell anyone, okay? It will hurt Sarah and the troop. Think of the congregation, he begged while grabbing her by the wrist. It'll be our little secret, okay? Lizzie shook her head in agreement. And as a thank you for not telling, I'll help you in case you get better at your running. Huh? Yeah, I saw you two racing by and you could use some work. Still in shock, Lizzie didn't respond. As a matter of fact, we will meet outside of the estate and we'll run real quick before the game. So see you then, he instructed. After saying that, he walked back to Templo Nuestro's parking lot. Lizzie stayed behind and watched as Edward grew smaller and smaller in the distance. She looked around and felt a silence befall the creek. Maybe it was because her heart was still racing, but she no longer felt the tranquil serenity of that haven that was once there. She turned around and walked back towards the church. She made it on time. The last bus had just left and Casey was standing outside. There you are, she shouted. What happened? I'll tell you right now. Why were you and Edward coming from the back? Casey asked. Oh no, girl, I got stuff to tell you, but in private. What do you mean? It's nothing like that, but we're going to be running with him tonight. My goodness, shouted Casey in excitement. Don't get too excited. He's dating Sarah. Sarah? Yes. No wonder she's always with him. Yeah, but he still wants to help us out with our running, said Lizzie. That's cool, shouted Casey. So what happened after you fought with Pollyanna? Asked Lizzie. Oh my goodness, girl, it wasn't even a fight. Mary Elizabeth called my dad to let him know that I had gotten in trouble for saying bad words. Oh yeah? Yes, and then Catherine got pulled in as a witness, and she just lied about me shoving Marianne. But luckily Isaiah was there and he backed me up. Oh really? Yeah, it was the only reason I didn't get the demerit after all, and still I'm allowed to be the youth leader. So why did Marianne return to the assembly and not you? Pastor Glenn and Mary Elizabeth thought it'd be best we kept apart for the remainder of the day. And what did they say to lying Catherine? Nothing. That's so unfair. Yeah, I know. Casey's father, Juan, pulled up and drove the girls home. Later that day, both girls met at the end of the cul-de-sac and made their way onto Winter Lane. So are we really going to jog with Edward? Yes, Casey. Oh my god. Stop saying that and act normal. Remember, he's too old for us and is dating Sarah. A girl can dream. They made their way out of Fall Avenue. This time the distance seemed shorter. Once outside Pastor Glenn's estate, the girls were greeted by a shirtless Edward wearing a sweatband on his head and running shorts. This drove Casey wild. Not only was he easy on the eyes, he had a ripped body. Hey, liaisons! Hey, Casey shouted. All right, you all ready for the best run of your lives? He asked. Yeah, Casey replied. Both Casey and Edward took off sprinting. Lizzie was trotting behind them, trying to give Casey and Edward time to talk. As she was jogging down Winter Lane, she couldn't help but daydream about things she's going to accomplish for senior year. She was going to run for senior class president, join student council once more, and possibly get the nomination for homecoming queen. No longer was she going to be the wallflower. As she was thinking this in her mind, she couldn't help but wonder what Edward and Sarah were going to do out there in the creek. She began to wonder about the proposal Evan was offering her as well. If Edward and Sarah couldn't resist their urges but still be good Christians, why couldn't she and Evan? Lizzie, where you at? Not noticing how her thoughts slowed her down, she saw Edward and Casey running back towards her. Sorry, not feeling so hot today. Really tired, she lied. Yeah, I bet, added Edward. We did so many things while you were gone, Casey. Like what? Casey asked. Just to skip some questions, replied Edward. Lizzie had to do the job of 5 people, but she rocked it. Ah, added Casey. Yeah, tomorrow I'm going to do a special presentation plus a special comedy treat by moi, he added. Moi? Both girls asked. Oh, you girls don't speak French? No. Ah, well, moi means me in French. Oh, really? Gushed Casey. Yeah, it will be a part of my routine. You'll see tomorrow. At the end of the statement, they reached the estate once more. Edward and the girls parted ways. The girls went back home and rested up for the second to last day of camp. See you tomorrow, Lizzie. See you tomorrow, Case. With that concludes our second part of the 4-night season 2 premiere of the Introverted Poets podcast. We just listened to the second part of summer of 1987, covering Tuesday and Wednesday. Join us tomorrow night when we cover Thursday through Saturday. I am your host, author, and narrator, Ileana Jade. As always, stay safe this spring break 2021. Good night, loves.
Hello and welcome back to the Introverted Poets podcast. Tonight is our third installment of our 4-night season 2 premiere, covering summer of 1997, a fiction story written by yours truly, Ileana Jade. Now, for those of you not familiar with the podcast, we are a safe space for the shy poet or writer who wishes to share their works under a pen name. Si hablamos español y esperamos que alguien envíe una historia o una poema para grabar un episodio en español. Ways to be featured are by submissions to our Gmail at introvertedpoetsociety@gmail.com. You can also follow us on Tumblr, Twitter, and Instagram. Links for all of our social media accounts will be provided in the episode description. Last night we found out the heartthrob Edward was harboring a secret. He made Lizzie promise she wouldn't reveal it to anybody. Aside from that, we also found out more depth about our characters. We just see how complex all of these players are, whether major or minor. We find out that Casey is a rebel, even though she's very good intentioned. We also find that Lizzie isn't as innocent as we think. Tonight we find out what happens on Thursday and Friday of summer camp of 1987. Check it out. Thursday. The girls were once again waiting in the lounge for the day to start. Remember, do not be bad-mouthing the head of the church's daughter, Casey, reminded Lizzie. Whatever, I don't start fights. I end them. Technically, you did start this one. Marcela walked in with a box of baked goods from her bakery from Telephone Road. Good morning, girls, she cheered. Good morning, Marcela, they both greeted. I bought you all some goodies, even though one of you doesn't deserve it, she jokingly stated. Huh. To forgive is to be Christian. You got a point there, Casey. Here, girls, have some. Pastor Emmanuel and I made them fresh at 5 a.m. this morning. You were up that early, exclaimed Casey. Oh, yes, we get a rush from 6 a.m. to 9:30 during the week. The girls reached in and grabbed the sweet bread in the box. They got the regalos and conchas before anyone else showed up. Is there coffee? Asked Lizzie. Why, yes, mija, in my office. I didn't know you liked coffee, Lizzie, remarked Marcela. I didn't sleep so well last night, she explained. Lizzie stepped out and went into the office and grabbed a cup of coffee. Truth is, she stayed up all night thinking about what she witnessed. She didn't know how she could tell her best friend since childhood she saw Edward's manhood. If she couldn't figure a way to tell her about Evan, how could she ever mention Edward and Sarah sinning? Well, Edward, since Sarah wasn't even there. Lizzie walked out of the office and back into the hallway to head back towards the lounge when she ran into Edward alone. Good morning, Lizzie, he nervously whispered. Hi, she replied while avoiding eye contact. Lizzie, in order for us to keep our little secret, you're going to have to act like everything is fine, he demanded. I'm the wallflower anyway, so don't worry. Yeah, but now every time you see me, you get so red it's like you saw my privates. You didn't. Not that I mind, because it's normal. No, I didn't, she said, quickly walking away. Edward quickly ran from behind her and grabbed her by the wrist before she could get into the lounge. Lizzie, he sternly whispered. You need to start acting right. You're 17 years old. Grow up. There's going to come a point in your life as a woman where you will have to fulfill your womanly duties. A part of that is when you're married, but until then, we both have a reputation to maintain. So act normal, or people are going to assume you and I did something, and Sarah won't take kindly to that. And I don't think Casey would either. Casey, she whispered. Yes, Casey. How did you? It's obvious. She throws herself at me with her eager eyes. Look, I won't ever say a word. I'll keep your secret if you keep mine and Sarah's, okay? Lizzie shook her head in agreement, not noticing the spilled coffee on her white shoes. Shit, she whispered. Watch your language, Edward stated before going into the lounge. Lizzie walked back into Marcella's office and made herself another cup of coffee. This time she remained inside the office and drank it. She hoped this cup of coffee never ended because aside from not wanting to be near Marianne or her family, now she wanted to avoid Edward like the plague. She looked at the time and saw it was 9 a.m. 30 minutes went by quickly. The door opened and in came Mary Elizabeth. Lizzie, what are you doing here in the dark? Praying, she quickly answered. Oh, well, don't mind me, dear. I'm going to get me a cup of coffee, too. You keep praying. Mary Elizabeth grabbed a tray and placed 4 cups of coffee on it. She walked out as quickly as she walked in. Being the head of the church, Mary Elizabeth's hosting skills were phenomenal. Anytime a party was to be thrown for Temple and Nuestro, everyone always wanted Mary Elizabeth to be in charge of it all. Or if Mary Elizabeth was to host a party, everyone wanted to attend. Lizzie looked at the clock once more and saw it was 9:15 a.m. She got up and walked back towards the lounge despite every thought in her head shouting no. She opened the door and walked in with her normal facing the ground entrance. While avoiding Edward, Lizzie walked towards where Casey had been sitting. Across the room was Marianne, Catherine, Marcella, and Mary Elizabeth. Where have you been? Asked Casey. I was praying. Praying? Yeah, for some strength since I couldn't sleep so well last night. Why not? I was just thinking about college admissions, fretted Lizzie. Lizzie, it's barely June. Calm down. We got plenty of time, assured Casey. Pastor Glenn walked in along with the other 5 members of the prayer troop. Ah, there you are, Edward, he shouted. Hearing his name made Lizzie shudder. My man, yelled Edward. Your Spurs got lucky last night, teased Pastor Glenn. Nah, man, they were just awesome, insisted Edward. All right, anyway, back to business, stated Pastor Glenn in a serious tone. Today's the second to last day of the camp, and tomorrow we say goodbye to our pals from Pray. Aww, every woman in the lounge groaned except Lizzie. Now, we have their mailing address, so we may send letters to them, comforted Pastor Glenn. Indeed, boasted Marianne while looking at Casey and Lizzie. Now, Isaiah, I believe you have the floor. We have to go finish with breakfast and be ready for morning prayer. And you guessed it, another game of Bible trivia, except this time it will be like Family Feud, Pastor Glenn then walked out. Okay, liaisons, today we'll be needing your help with some skits, he stated. Oh, they all shouted. Yeah, we'll be needing a girl and a boy to do some acting. Today we'll be talking about abstinence, stated Isaiah. The lounge suddenly got quiet. So I need a girl to pretend to not want to and mention a purity ring to her boyfriend. I'll pretend, of course, because aside from talking about abstinence and STDs, we are going to be taking pledges to our Lord about saving ourselves for marriage. Hearing those words escape Isaiah's mouth made Lizzie wince. She wondered if Edward and Sarah were wearing purity rings. She looked at Sarah's finger and saw one. Edward was sitting behind her and Casey. She would have to wait for that. However, knowing that Sarah is wearing one and Edward is begging her to stay mum about what she knows, she imagines he also took a pledge, which is why he wants her quiet. After the abstinence lesson, Edward will take the stage and do a comedy routine for an hour. Now, who wants to be my Betty? That's the name of the girl in the play we wrote, asked Isaiah enthusiastically. Marianne, Catherine, and Casey quickly shot their hands up. Why not have Marianne and Julio do it, suggested Mary Elizabeth. They are the head of the youth Bible group, after all. Very well, then. Marianne and Julio, winced Isaiah. Come here so we can begin rehearsing your lines, and let's find Julio. Isaiah and Marianne left the lounge and searched for Julio. He was most probably at the breakfast line helping Pastor Gilbert and Emmanuel, also with the custodians. Now the rest of you will be helping us with, you guessed it,
Props and the pledges, instructed Hannah. We're going to need someone to organize the purity rings, someone to laminate the purity ring pledges, someone to get the black markers ready, and someone to make a backdrop of a starry night. Lizzie and Casey volunteered to be the ones to draw the starry night backdrop since they were familiar with sets due to one-act play. Catherine was in charge of going to the office to laminate the pledges. Edward and Sarah organized the purity rings. Joshua and Marcella gathered the black markers, while Hannah made goodie bags for the Q&A portion of the lecture. Are you going to wait until marriage? Asked Casey. I don't know. You don't know? Shh, Casey, shut up. Sorry, it's you. No, I don't know. I mean, I want to, but what if I meet my husband and we, before marriage? You mean you'll wait until you're engaged? I don't know. I've never thought about it, honestly. I just know it just has to be special. So prom? No. I don't know. It's a big commitment. I mean, what if I take this ring and then I sin? What are you trying to say, Lizzie? All I'm saying is that nobody's perfect. That's exactly right, Lizzie, said an all too familiar voice from behind them. Both girls turned around and saw Edward. Hi, Eddie, excitedly greeted Casey. Hi, quietly added Lizzie. What are you girls talking about? He asked. About the pledge. Oh, okay, I see. I'm starting to get a degree in pastoral counseling. If you all need advice, I'm your man. Really? Asked Casey disappointedly. Yeah, I took the pledge and still going strong. Look at my awesome purity ring, he stated while shoving the ring in both Lizzie and Casey's faces. Take it. It's the best deal you can make with God. He walked away and began rehearsing his comedy routine in front of the other 4 members of the troupe. Why did you sound so glum all of a sudden, Casey? Is he no longer your husband to be? Oh, knowing that he wants to be a pastor is just not hot. What do you even mean? Well, pastors are like, Pastor Glenn and Pastor Lucinda. They're not hot. What does that even mean? And purity rings are for nerds. You're only saying that because of Jason. Jason is so dreamy and a jerk. Remember, he told everyone about what you did, Casey. No, he didn't. It was Marianne being jealous as always. Oh, really? According to whom? Jason, of course, stated Lizzie. Now focus and help me draw the stars and the moon. Both girls quietly painted the stars into the dark night and then added the crescent moon on the corner of the backdrop. Okay, that should do it, Casey stated. Should we add city buildings or a grassy hill? Asked Lizzie. Why? Well, like in one act, the background helps set the story, reasoned Lizzie. Yeah, I see what you mean. Do you know where it's even going to take place? Asked Casey. They'll be out in a lover's lane, said Edward. He was standing behind the girls once more. How long have you been back there? Asked Casey. Just got here. I was rehearsing my jokes for the comedy special, he explained. Mary Elizabeth stood in the middle of the room. All right, y'all, it's about 10:30 a.m. We need to go out and help the other pastors and get ready for Bible trivia. Hannah, have you finished the 5 goodie bags for the winner, Shug? She asked. Yes, ma'am, responded Hannah. God bless you, hon, exclaimed Mary Elizabeth. Now, Lizzie and Casey, have you finished the backdrops? Yes, Mary Elizabeth, they both responded. Excellent, girls. Catherine, are you done cutting the laminated pledges? Yes, Mary Elizabeth. Are the rest of you ready? Always, replied Isaiah. Okay, now let's go out there and have some fun in the name of our Lord and Savior, y'all, Mary Elizabeth shouted. She walked out of the lounge and everyone else followed in suit. Casey and Lizzie purposely stayed behind to chat. What do you think a person studying to be a pastor laughs about? Asked Casey. I don't know. Who turned the water to wine with the Pope's ring? Jested Lizzie. Those are Catholics, Lizzie. Both girls began laughing as they made their way into Assembly Hall. Once backstage again, the tranquil mood changed to a more upbeat one. Backstage, Marianne and Julio were sitting on 2 folding chairs rehearsing lines. Julio was pretending to be driving a car. Jason, Mario, Marcus, Michael, Evan, and Henry were all surrounding Pastor Ramiro and Pastor Gilbert laughing. Not knowing what to do, the girls stood looking around the backstage. Wow, not like the lounge, awed Casey. Was it like this yesterday? Not even close, answered Lizzie. What do we do? Nothing. You just wait until you're needed like good little liaisons, Edward once more said from behind the girls. Yo, Eddie, you move a little too quietly there, joked Casey. Really? He gushed. Yeah, we're gonna need to put a bell around you, added Lizzie, who normally didn't let anything slip. Both Edward and Casey looked shocked. If only he was a prize, whispered Casey. Girl, I thought you didn't like him anymore, asked Lizzie. Well, after right now, I do again, declared Casey. Ay, Casey, que te entiende, Lizzie jokingly stated. That's correct, shouted Edward over the speakers. He ran out into the crowd and handed a goodie bag to a little girl who was standing up next to Marcella.
The time was now for lunch.
Girls, if you could help out with handing out the sack lunches, that'd be great, ordered Mary Elizabeth.
Both Casey and Lizzie went outside towards the parking lot where the crates of milk and brown bags had been placed. Just the two of us for nearly 600 kids, asked Casey. I'm sure they'll send someone to help us, assured Lizzie. Did you do this yesterday? No, but if 4 pastors and 4 students needed to handle it, I'm sure we'll be fine, Lizzie reassured. Just then, the door of the assembly halls bursted open and came out Edward, Isaiah, Sarah, Joanna, Hannah, Joshua, Evan, Henry, Julio, Marcus, Mario, and everyone else who was backstage to help the girls hand out the lunches and the milks. Edward got in the crate next to Lizzie, and Sarah stood next to Edward. From time to time, Lizzie would catch Edward shooting glances at her, almost as if he was trying to make sure Lizzie never breathed a word to Casey about the day before. 1 p.m.
Okay, that was a successful lunch, y'all, thanked Mary Elizabeth. Thank the heavens for you all. May you forever stay blessed.
The youth leaders, prayer troop, and pastors all headed back to the assembly hall for the talk on abstinence. Lizzie and Casey stood on the wings of the stage and watched as Isaiah took center stage. The remaining 5 stood behind him.
Boy, that was an amazing lunch, wasn't it? I don't know about you all, but I sure do love me a good submarine sandwich with mustard.
This made the children laugh. Now, boys and girls, today we are going to talk about something serious.
Is it about saying no to drugs again?
A random voice shouted from the crowd.
No, good answer though, but today we are going to be talking about abstinence. Can anyone tell me what abstinence is?
He paused and waited for the crowd to answer, but nobody responded.
Okay, well, that's why we're here, and we're going to tell you all what abstinence is.
Abstinence is when you take a pledge to refrain from premarital sex. Ooh, the children all shouted and laughed.
I know. Sex is a funny word, ain't it? But what premarital sex means is having sex before you are married. Now, can anyone tell me why that's bad, he asked. I know. It's because it goes against God's laws, answered a little boy from the crowd.
Very good, shouted Isaiah. Hannah, toss him a praise shirt.
Hannah tossed the shirt to the little boy.
Now, besides it being against God's will, why is having premarital sex bad?
Because you can get pregnant, shouted a teenage girl in the crowd.
That's exactly right. We don't want any teenage pregnancies. Go ahead and toss her a shirt.
Edward tossed the shirt towards the teenager. Now, can anyone find another reason as to why premarital sex is bad? Asked Isaiah once more. Yet this time, no one answered.
Okay,
another reason why it's bad is because the dangers of catching an STD, he explained.
Does anybody know what STD stands for?
No, they all shouted.
Well, STD stands for sinfully transmitted diseases, he jokingly stated, to which the crowd laughed. Just kidding. It stands for sexually transmitted diseases.
You see, kids, most of the time when people are having premarital sex, they're not using protection or prayer, and therefore they end up getting pregnant or catching STDs.
Ooh, they once more stated.
Yeah, so today we'll be explaining about the STDs, dangers of premarital sex, teen pregnancy, and what you could do to stay safe from the wrath of God and STDs.
Isaiah went on explaining the various infectious diseases one can get via sex, such as gonorrhea, chlamydia, herpes, genital warts, syphilis, etc. He even talked about peer pressure and how temptation will try to mess with the best of them.
Now, boys and girls, we are going to show you a skit about peer pressure, he announced. Onto the stage ran Marianne and Julio holding their folding chairs. Then Joshua and Edward quickly dragged the Lover's Lane backdrop onto the stage. Julio began pretending to drive with his arms extended as if they were truly at a driver's wheel.
Hey, babe, it's a nice night, he said.
Thank the Lord it is, responded Marianne in a fake voice.
Look at the beautiful night sky. Almost as beautiful as you, babe.
Julio and Marianne pretended to make out on stage.
Ooh, erupted from the crowd.
You ready to go all the way, babe?
I don't know. I did promise God I'd save myself for marriage.
Come on, babe. All the other guys on the football team are doing it with cheerleaders. Why not us too?
Pause, shouted Isaiah.
Boys and girls, what Julio is doing is called what?
Peer pressure, they all shouted in unison.
And what is Marianne referring to?
Abstinence.
Again, they shouted.
Now, if you were Marianne and Julio, what would you do? He posed.
Pray, one shouted. Leave the car, another joked. Those are good answers, but what Marianne should do is not only set the limits because, girls, it's your duty, but remind Julio of STDs. Now, a way to protect yourself from STDs and the Lord's wrath, Julio and Marianne are going to do something now. Watch and pay attention, boys and girls. Julio and Marianne resumed their acting. Well, I know, but they didn't take the pledge I did at Templo Nuestro Christian Church, and I don't want to upset God. Flee the evil desires of youth and pursue righteousness, faith, love, and peace, along with those who call on the Lord out of a pure heart. I know that, but a pledge? Upset God? How? I don't want to upset God. Yeah, I signed this paper and promised God I would refrain from having sex and save myself for marriage. Oh, how do I take a pledge? I don't want to burn in hell, said Julio. You sign right here, and once you sign it, you wear this ring too. A ring? He asked. Yeah, a symbol of purity. They're called purity rings. When the team sees you wearing this, they too would want to abstain from premarital sex and take the pledge. Wow, Marianne, I'm so glad you told me about abstinence and purity rings. I would have never known. From now on, I'm going to be right with the Lord, exclaimed Julio. And cut, shouted Isaiah. Let's give a big hand to our actors who are pretending right now. All the children clapped and Marianne and Julio stood up and took a bow. Now, boys and girls, your pastors and youth leaders are going to be handing out pledges and markers. You are going to sign the purity pledge that states, I blank, and you are going to put your name on there, not mine. I blank commit to a pure life from this day forward and abstain from premarital sex until marriage. I do so for the following reasons: to obey God, honor my parents, honor my future spouse, be free of unwanted pregnancy, to be free of HIV and STDs, and to be free of sin. And you put the date on the bottom. Once you are done taking the pledge, you will be wearing your purity ring, Isaiah instructed. The assembly hall was packed with noise of children and youth leaders alike taking the pledge and putting their rings on. Lizzie couldn't help but feel a sinking pit in her stomach. The hypocrisy of it all. To wear a purity ring and to soil it by having premarital sex. They were adults anyway, so why weren't Sarah and Edward married, she thought. Being an adult is complicated. Okay, boys and girls, are we done with our pledges? Asked Pastor Glenn. Yes, they shouted. Okay, good. Now we have a special treat for you all. We have a comedy routine by Edward. Now please help me welcome him onto the stage with a big round of applause, instructed Pastor Glenn. The children applauded and cheered as Edward made his way onto the stage while simultaneously clapping and dancing robotically to music. The music cut. Hello, hello. Good afternoon, Templo Nuestro Christian Church, home of the Houston Rockets and awesome space cadets. Can I get a whoop whoop? He shouted into the microphone. Whoop whoop, they all shouted. Today I'm going to be telling jokes because aside from being a part of this wonderful pray group, I'm also a world-traveling motivational speaker. So I go around place to place and say jokes in many different languages and talk to kids like you. Ooh, yeah, I can speak 7 different languages, he stated to the already amazed crowd. The routine went on for about an hour. By the time Edward was done, it was time to load the buses once more. The children moved faster and faster, and the process became easier with each passing day. The good thing is that tomorrow, Friday, was their last day. Thank the Lord we are done for today, sighed Casey. Amen to that, replied Lizzie. Both girls walked back to the administration building and waited for Casey's dad to come for them once more. It had been 4:15 p.m. and still no sign of Mr. Fuentes. A door opened and out came Marcela. Casey, your dad got held up at a meeting. He said for you girls to take the bus back home. We've never taken the bus before, added Lizzie. It'll do you some good. You'll get to see the city. How do we get home using the bus? Asked Casey. You're going to take the bus here and ask for a transfer at the station to New Caney. You'll get to see downtown Houston. Only 50 cents too, exclaimed Marcela. Wow, you know a lot about buses, Marcela, said Casey. Rode them all the time to Galveston and back when I was your age. Heck, I even jogged on the beach. You ran track too? Oh no, I just wanted to look like Farrah Fawcett. Who? Never mind. Girls, take the 1:15 in 20 minutes. Go wait at the bus stop. She handed Lizzie $1 in quarters. See you tomorrow, si Dios quiere. Both girls took off towards the bus stop. 20 minutes in and the 1:15 sure did show up. Both girls boarded the bus, handing the 50 cents into the coin collector. They saw the last seat of the bus empty and made their way towards it. They sat down and began moving. looking at the city skyline off of the I-45 heading towards downtown Houston. Wow, that's so many cars, odd Casey. Yeah, nothing like the toll roads our fathers take. It's a lot more traffic. Think about it as an adventure, reasoned Lizzie. It was a good 3 hours before the girls headed back home. They had to wait 45 minutes for the 137 to New Caney, but it had a flat, so they had to wait an hour for it to be repaired. It was 7 p.m. Mija, where have you been? Asked Maria. Nowhere, Mommy. Just the bus took forever. Ay, Diosito Santo, thank God you're okay. Are you going to go out running still? Claro que sí, Mommy. Casey ran upstairs and got dressed for running. She waited outside for Lizzie. Lizzie came out and they both took off running, once more making their way towards Pastor Glenn's estate. What's the plan for tonight now, Case? The same one as Tuesdays. He has a girlfriend. And they can break up. I don't think so. What makes you say that? And furthermore, what were you doing with him in the back on Wednesday? Nothing. We were just talking about how he and Sarah are a thing. How did you find out he and Sarah are a thing? Okay, I didn't want to tell you this, but I figure since tomorrow is the last day they'll be here, I might as well just tell you, explained Lizzie. Tell me what? Asked Casey. There's this creek behind the church that I love to go to. Why? To pray. Pray for what? Focus, Casey. After the skits on Wednesday, I didn't know where you were, so I decided to ditch bus loading. What a rebel! Shh! I was going back there and I saw Edward and Sarah doing it. Shh! Put your voice down. We are almost there and he could be out running. But no, not exactly. Then what did you see? Edward with Sarah? No, but this is super embarrassing. Just spit it out, Lizzie. He had his pants down and... Oh my God! Did you see his thingy? Lower your voice. I don't want anyone knowing, but yes, and it wasn't a thingy, but a thing, Lizzie emphasized. Oh wow, I want to see. Not the point, Casey. Well, what is the point then? What did you do? What did he say? Remember that I saw him first. Is this why you didn't want to take the purity pledge earlier? Oh my gosh, Casey, that is not the point. Just listen and let me finish telling you the story. Look, nothing happened. I panicked and screamed, and he got scared too. We both shouted, and he quickly picked up his pants. When I asked why he was there, he said he was waiting for Sarah. But didn't we sign that? Yeah, I know. And don't they wear a... Mm-hmm. So it isn't that I did something with him. It's just that if he and Sarah can wear a ring and still be active and be in the position they're in, why can't the rest of us do the same? Who makes these rules? Well, it's just a paper, Lizzie. If you pray to God for forgiveness, he'll forgive you, said an all too familiar sounding voice behind the girls. Okay, we're going to take a short break. Check out these ads. Hey there, Ileana Jade here. Need some more quality podcasts about writing with a little panache? Why not check out my friend AJ Ortega's podcast, Writers and Fighters? Same places you find this one on, and also on Apple Podcasts. Tune in as AJ breaks down fights from MMA, boxing, and also interviews both writers and fighters. Hello there. If you're into streaming and gaming, why don't you check out my buddy Keith's Twitch account at iiProjectK, and also my buddy SCult23. Information will be provided in the episode description below. Enjoy! Both girls turned and saw Edward standing there. Only it was nighttime and the part of Winter Lane they were on had no street light. I thought you could keep a secret, growled Edward. It's not her fault. I was asking. And besides, the way Sarah follows you around, quickly reasoned Casey. Just like you and Jason sneak around the church, Edward stated. How did you... I'll keep your secret if you keep mine and Sarah's, quickly rebutted Edward. But why are you hiding it? Because we aren't ready for marriage, and if the pastors were to find out, they'd make us break up or get married, and we understand, quickly addressed Lizzie. Look, I'll give you girls whatever you want. Just don't tell anybody. If you want, we can go jogging wherever you want tomorrow, since I don't leave until Sunday, and I'll even buy you girls pizza. Just don't tell anyone or it will break Sarah, sorrowfully panicked Edward. Both girls nodded in agreement. Okay, cool. Tomorrow after camp, we'll go to the beach and run together.
pack your tracksuits." He sprinted off. "Do you think we did the right thing?" asked Lizzie. "Yeah," answered Casey, who was smiling in the darkness. Friday. Casey was eagerly packing a cute track outfit into her backpack before heading downstairs for breakfast. She could smell the pancakes her mom was making. "Yamero, Casey!" Maria shouted from downstairs. "Yeah, Mommy!" Casey ran down the stairs and into the kitchen where her father was reading the Houston Chronicle and sipped his coffee. "Here are your hotcakes, mija, with the syrup." "Gracias, Mommy," she cheerfully stated. Casey was smiling ear to ear while pouring syrup on her pancakes. She was happy that by the end of the day she would be jogging beachside with her crush, Edward. Even though he had a girlfriend named Sarah, this didn't deter Casey. The fact that he didn't take the vows to abstain seriously meant he probably wasn't taking Sarah either. The reason why he didn't want to marry Sarah was the same one Jason von Holtz gave her about being boyfriend and girlfriend. After all boys are the same deep down. She was going to attempt to sneak a kiss from Edward. She hoped that by kissing him on the beach after the run, he'd fall in love with her and wait for her to graduate. She was a good kisser after all. Asked Jason. "Why are you smiling so much, mija? Is it because of the dance today?" asked Juan. "Yes, papi," she lied. "Well, I hope you and Lizzie take your purity pledge seriously." "Daddy, Juan!" "What? I'm just saying. I remember the dances at my church camps and, well, are you saying you don't trust our bebita?" angrily asked Maria. "No, mi amor. I'm just saying. I remember being a teenage boy, therefore I don't trust them," he explained. Casey finished her breakfast. Juan stood up and kissed his wife goodbye. Casey went up and hugged her mother goodbye as well. "Let's hope I don't get caught up in another meeting today. It's Friday," Juan hoped. "Lo que Dios quiera, amor," stated Maria. Juan and Casey went out to the Liz Sabre. Lizzie was already waiting by the car. "Buenos dias, Mr. Fuentes." "Morning, Lizzie. Ready for your final day of camp?" "Amen," she responded. They all got into the car and took off. It was bright and sunny. The sun was still rising. The weather felt beautiful. It was right before that dreaded humidity set in. Lucky for the girls, today's adventure included a refresher at the beach. Not only would Casey be close to Edward, jogging at the beach sounded relaxing for Lizzie, who wanted a change in scenery anyway. They arrived to camp and waited in the lounge as per usual. "Last day," mentioned Lizzie. "More like the best day," corrected Casey. "We shall see about that." "Ah, ye of little faith," Casey retorted. Both girls giggled as Pastor Glenn walked in. He was followed by Mary Elizabeth, Mary Ann, Marcella, and Pastor Emmanuel with boxes of what looked like Marcella's baked goods. "Good morning, liaisons. We brought you all a yummy batch of kolaches as a thank you for helping us and doing a super fantastic job," greeted Pastor Glenn. "God bless you," shouted Casey. "Thank you," thanked Lizzie. "Lizzie, the coffee's being made in case you need any this morning," noted Marcella. "Oh, no, thank you, Marce. I won't be needing it this time." "Well, just in case you want some, mija, it will be there," she assured her. The girls grabbed some kolaches and ate while they waited for the remainder of the youth leaders to get theirs. It was only 8:45 a.m. Buses arrived at 9 a.m. and breakfast was handed out to the children as soon as they stepped off. What they gave them, the girls didn't know. Perhaps Jason and Julio did. "Are you excited for the dance?" asked Casey. "Oh, snap, I had forgotten about that," mentioned Lizzie. "Yeah, it's going to be after lunch." "Will you be dancing with your boyfriend?" asked Lizzie. "No, that's later," replied Casey. "What are you up to now?" "Nothing. Just going to try to, sneak a kiss from Edward." "Casey, you ought to be ashamed. He has a girlfriend. And he also wears a purity ring." "Your point being? If he wears a purity ring and then does it with her, yet refuses to marry her, you think he won't cheat on her?" "What are you talking about, Casey?" "Well, the whole not being ready thing. It's just an excuse for them not to make anything official. It's what Jason did to me. I read it in a magazine my older sister reads," Casey explained. "Did that magazine also have Bible verses about messing with men that are taken?" "Oh my God, Lizzie." "Language and Ephesians 5:3. "Lizzie, please. They're not even married, so they're going to burn anyway," Casey reasoned. "Didn't you take the pledge?" "Well, like Edward said, if we ask God for forgiveness afterwards, He'd forgive." Julio and his gang walked out of the lounge and out to help the other pastors with the breakfast and unloading of the buses. Mary Elizabeth, Marcella, Catherine, and Mary Ann stayed behind. It was 9 a.m. At 9:01, the troop walked in. "Hello, hello," greeted Isaiah. "Good morning," the rest greeted. "What's on the agenda for today?" asked Isaiah. "Oh, the kids are going to have a free day and watch a movie. Then after lunch, we have our annual youth summer dance. It lasts until the buses get here and the kids leave, and that's the end of the camp." "Wow, this week went by so fast," stated Edward. "It sure did, Mary Elizabeth responded. Without anything to do, the troop and the other girls sat around the lounge just talking. In came Pastor Glenn, Pastor Gilberto, Pastor Emmanuel, and Pastor Ramiro.
Lucinda and the other youth leaders were in the assembly hall watching the children play and talk. "Good morning, everyone," greeted Pastor Glenn. "Good morning," the room responded. "Well, as you may know, today's our last day. It's bittersweet, but unfortunately camp is only a week and not the whole summer," he stated. "So for today, relax, and then after lunch, have some fun and dance. Right now, the kiddos are going to watch a movie at 10 a.m. Enjoy your free time. You've all earned it for being amazing liaisons." Pastor Glenn and the other pastors left the room. Mary Elizabeth walked out behind them. Marcella, the Pray Troop, Casey, Lizzie, Catherine, and Marianne remained. The time was 9:55 a.m. Casey and Lizzie were sitting together when suddenly Catherine and Marianne approached them. "Hey," greeted Marianne. "Hi," Casey answered, confused. "I just wanted to say I'm sorry about the other day. It wasn't right what I did, and being that we have known each other forever and go to the same school, I thought maybe we could try and be friends. Not just you and me, but with my girls too. I mean, we all are seniors, proposed Marianne. Looking stunned, Casey and Lizzie exchanged glances. "I mean, I understand if you don't want to. I haven't always been the nicest," Marianne added. "Marianne, what kind of Christians would we be if we didn't forgive?" stated Lizzie. "Yeah," chimed Casey. "Not very good ones, I suppose," stated Marianne. "We'll be glad to be your friends if you want to be ours," Lizzie replied. "Amazing," smiled Marianne. The girls sat down together and began talking about their hopes and dreams for their upcoming senior year. Marianne wanted to become homecoming queen, and she wanted the nomination from the cheer squad, and Lizzie wanted hers from track. Catherine wanted to win cheer nationals, and Casey wanted to run the fastest at the meets. Amongst them talking, time went by even faster. By the time lunch rolled around, the girls were tired of being cooped up inside. They wanted to have their lunch elsewhere. It was their last day. "Hey, I know a spot where we can go eat," mentioned Lizzie. "Where?" asked Catherine, who was walking beside Marianne. "Back here," Lizzie instructed as she led the group into the creek she loved. "Oh, wow, there's a creek back here?" marveled Marianne. "Yeah," added Casey. "How long have you known about this?" asked Marianne. "We didn't. Lizzie did," added Casey. "Oh," responded Marianne. The girls sat down and began eating their sack lunches. Marianne snuck out some kolaches to add with their sandwiches and apples. It was a nice windy day in Houston, and the girls enjoyed their lunch a bit more with the pleasant scenery and breeze. When suddenly their tranquil lunch was interrupted by a rustling in the bushes from behind them. All scared, they jumped up. Marianne, Casey, and Catherine stood behind Lizzie. They heard a snapping of the twig, then some more rustling from the bushes. And out came Sarah and Edward. "Oh, fuck," he shouted. "What? What?" Sarah asked as she was pulling her shirt down, still looking down. She finally looked up once her shirt was down and saw the 4 girls standing there. "Oh no. Now, girls." "You can't say anything," panicked Edward. "What was going on?" asked Casey. "It's not what it looks like," added Sarah. "Then explain yourselves," demanded Marianne. "We were just..." "Stop it," interrupted Sarah. "Look, girls, being that it's the last day of camp, how about we forget this ever happened? Besides, I don't think you all are even allowed to leave the church," she reminded. The 4 of them stood looking at Edward and Sarah. They knew that if they told Pastor Glenn what they'd witnessed, they'd be in trouble for leaving the premises, as opposed to helping with the lunch lines. "So how about you all go back and forget it ever happened?" Sarah ordered. The girls all ran back to the assembly hall as fast as they could, leaving their sack lunches behind at the creek. The music from the dance was blasting, and they all ran into the crowd of children. Once embedded enough into the crowd, Marianne turned to Casey and Lizzie and asked, "What was that?" "We don't know," they both answered in a panic. "Well, I'm telling my mom." "Marianne, you can't do that. You heard what Sarah said," reminded Lizzie. "Yeah, we will get in trouble for leaving the church," added Casey. "I don't care. My mom is married to the head of the church, and these people are leaving tomorrow anyway," Marianne reasoned. "My mom won't get mad at us for having a picnic." Marianne and Catherine walked out of the dance and went to find Mary Elizabeth. "Lizzie, we have to warn Edward," Casey mentioned. "Why?" "Because if not, he will think we told, and then he won't want to run with us anymore." "But Casey, what he and Sarah are doing is wrong." "Marianne cannot sabotage my chance with him, okay?" "What chance? He is with Sarah." "What about our community service hours? Surely we will get in trouble for that, and not her or Catherine. Remember, they get special treatment." Lizzie listened to the sound logic Casey provided. "Fine," Lizzie stated. Both girls ran out of the assembly building and went back towards the creek. Halfway through the parking lot, they ran into Edward alone. "Hey," he said, flagging them down. "Edward!" Casey shouted. "What's going on?" "No, nothing." "Hey, do you all still want to go running at the beach?" he offered. Sure," Casey agreed. "Okay, well, let's get going to beat the traffic to Galveston." "I've never been there before," gushed Casey. "Well, come on, let's go," he ordered. The girls went into the lounge and grabbed their bags. They quickly followed Edward out into the parking lot and into his black Mustang. "Buckled up?" he asked. "Yeah," they replied. "Okay, let's go." Edward took the I-10 merging to the I-45 towards Galveston. The drive was around 52 minutes, but the scenery was beautiful. They passed the NASA Space Center, which was something Lizzie and Casey had never seen before. The highway was surrounded by the ocean, which was shining beautifully. The Gulf on both sides. Once they arrived at Galveston, the time had been 2:15 p.m. They wondered if anyone had noticed they were gone. Hopefully they weren't in trouble for leaving. Casey would just say their father picked them up early that day and that Marcela was gone. Edward found an empty parking space right by the beach. "Okay, girls, we gotta change in the car like surfers," he informed. "Wow, the beach is beautiful," marveled Casey. She looked out the window, ignoring the fact that Edward was undressing right next to her. Once he was dressed, he got out of the car and allowed the girls time to change into their running gear. He was keeping guard, making sure no passerby looked into the car. As the girls were changing, they began talking. "What happened to telling him about what Marianne is gonna..." "I figured I didn't want to spoil the mood, and besides, he's acting like nothing even happened," whispered Casey. "I sometimes wonder what occurs in that pretty little head of yours, Casey," asked Lizzie. "Oh, hush. I just didn't want to spoil the mood, okay? And if Marianne tells, that's her issue with him. I have a plan I need to accomplish. He has a girlfriend. It doesn't matter." Once the girls were done getting dressed, they stepped out of the car. "Okay, put your bags in the trunk so nobody breaks in," he ordered. Okay, both girls put their gym bags in the trunk. Edward locked it and beeped the alarm. "All right, ladies, let's begin with a nice stretch," he instructed. Lizzie looked out and saw a pier in the distance. "What's that?" she asked. "Ah, the pier. It's called Pleasure Pier," he informed them. "Ooh," Casey cooed while winking at Edward. Edward ignored her and turned around facing the waves. "I like the sound of that," he said. He took off walking slowly and the girls followed suit. They quietly jogged on the sand, listening to the crashing of the waves and the sound of the seagulls. Lizzie and Casey enjoyed the ocean breeze caressing their hair. Edward ran ahead of the girls, occasionally turning around to motivate them some more. It was a good 45 minutes before reaching Pleasure Pier. Out of breath, all three of them walked back towards the car, this time taking an hour since they were chatting and enjoying the shore. Once in the car, they headed for the Pizza Hut on the island. It was 5 p.m. by the time the girls decided they wanted to head back home. "Oh, y'all don't want to wait out traffic and get an ice cream instead?" suggested Edward. "I mean, Houston to New Caney traffic doesn't die down until about 7, and well, dinner isn't until 8. By then it's only 45 minutes to get there. The ice cream shop's right around the corner." Both girls stared at each other and then reluctantly agreed to go with him to the ice cream shop. They left the restaurant and once again hopped into the Mustang. They drove around for a bit and found an ice cream. They sat down and began talking about how they wanted to achieve their goals by the age of 25. Edward smiled and nodded. Both girls didn't notice that he didn't eat at the restaurant, nor was he eating at the ice cream shop. The time was now 5:45 p.m. "Okay, girls, I think it's time for us to head back," he ordered. They dumped their cones in the trash bin and walked out of the shop. They loaded the car and made their way back towards the I-45 towards Houston. They were 30 minutes on the highway when Edward pulled off into League City. "Why are we here?" asked Casey. "Oh, I need to put gas in the Stang," he stated. "Okay," answered Casey. Edward made a right on Brockport Drive and then left onto Big League Dreams Parkway. Further down, he turned onto Calder Road and slowly parked his car on the side of an empty field. "There's no gas station here," stated Lizzie. "Why are we stopping?" asked Casey. Edward didn't answer, however. Instead, he kept looking out into the stretch of fields on the corner of Calder and Irving Street. "Why couldn't you all keep your mouth shut?" he asked in a monotone voice, while staring out into the ever-stretching fields and roads. "What?" asked Lizzie. "You heard me, Lizzie," he stated while simultaneously locking the car doors. And that's a wrap for episode 3. I am your host and narrator, Ileana Jade. Join us tomorrow night for the final night of our Season 2 4-night premiere, where we will discuss the final chapter of Summer of 1997. We're going to find out what happens that Friday night.
and what happened Saturday and Sunday as well. Being that it is the last section and the last episode of the 4-night event, we will be having a Q&A. We'll be posting a box for you all to submit questions on our Tumblr, Instagram, and Twitter. Like I said earlier, our social media links will be posted on the episode description. And stay safe, y'all, and join us tomorrow night.
Welcome back to our final installment of Summer of 1997. I am your host and narrator, Eliana J. Tonight on the Introverted Poets podcast, we pick up where we left off last night. It's Friday night, June 13th, 1997, for those of you who've been paying attention. Rather than taking the girls back home, Edward decided to pull off into League City and ask Lizzie why she couldn't keep a secret. Let's see what happens next.
What are you doing? Asked a scared Casey. I am asking Lizzie a question, Casey. I want to know why she felt the need to tell you my business with Sarah. Look, we're best friends, and we tell each other everything. So I was bound to find out, okay? And besides, the way, like I said, the way Sarah follows you around, and do you realize the damage you and Lizzie have done? Damage? Asked Lizzie, who was now crying. I could get kicked out of my pastoral program, pray, and Sarah could dump me, he shouted. We're sorry. Not yet you are. He then grabbed Lizzie by the neck and began to apply pressure. Tell me again why you told Casey. Why did you take Marianne and Catherine back there? Did you want to see what makes a man a man? Talking through close teeth, he shouted this in her face. Due to the pressure in her neck, however, Lizzie couldn't answer, nor could she breathe. Casey was desperately trying to open the car door, which had been locked from the outside as well. Stop it! Let us go, pleaded Casey. You're hurting her. Did you all ever think about how much gossip hurts others? He retorted. What about your dinner at Pastor Glenn's house? Don't you all have a farewell dinner? She desperately reminded. Edward didn't respond, however. With one final squeeze, Lizzie's body gave and slumped over onto the back seat. Casey looked at Edward, terrified. No. What have you done to Lizzie? She cried. Don't worry, you'll be with her soon enough, he whispered. Why are you doing this? Is this over a purity ring? It's not over a ring, he stated as he pulled Casey in closer to him. It's over girls like you ruining my life. He placed his hand around her neck, but Casey slapped his face. Ow! He shouted. He once more tried wrapping his hands around her neck. This time, however, Casey poked him in the eye. Ugh, you little bitch, he shouted. Casey then kicked the window open. She stuck her hand on the outside of the broken glass and pulled on the car door handle. She was able to open it and quickly run out into the fields. She figured by getting lost and hiding in the fields, he would give up and leave. But what would she tell Lizzie's parents? She made a right, and then a left, and then another right. She was out of breath and decided to squat down and lay low.
She figured by staying still she'd be able to hear if Edward was coming towards her. She could hear her heartbeat beating inside her ears. She felt it pulsating in her throat. Hidden between the tall stalks of grass and brush, Casey began praying to God that by some miracle, Lizzie would get up and run for help. However, deep down in the pit of her stomach, she knew she hadn't seen a gas station nearby, nor a house. She waited. Once she was done praying, she didn't hear a thing. What felt like an hour was only a few minutes, but to a frightened Casey, it was an eternity. She stayed sitting on the ground, hoping Edward would go away. She waited a few more minutes, and once more she heard nothing, just the rushing cars passing the Gulfway Highway. She turned around and saw the highway, miles away. If she screamed, who would hear her? If she ran, who would help her? She didn't know where she would run to. This was the first time visiting Galveston and League City. Hearing the cars rushing by made her make a break for it. She stood up from where she was crouching and made a run towards the highway. As she began sprinting past the Mustang, she noticed that Edward wasn't there anymore. The car was empty. She continued running and was trying to get towards Rockford Drive when suddenly her leg got caught up in something and landed face first. "Ugh," she let out. "Got you," Edward suddenly shouted. "No, no," she cried. Yes. "You are a floozy anyway," he stood up from where he was lying down and unbuckled his pants, and he took off his belt. He had one knee on Casey's lower back and the other one on the grass. Casey was still trying to move but was overpowered by a muscular Edward. The pizza and ice cream came back up. "Gross," Edward remarked. He then placed his thick belt strap around Casey's neck and pulled tightly. "No," she yelled before gurgling on her vomit. "Whores like you have to go." Jason mentioned what you allowed him to do at the church. Did you honestly think a whore like you who does things like that at a place of worship would be good enough for me?" asked Edward. He then tightened the belt some more and Casey's neck snapped. Her body slumped over and went limp. Edward placed it on the grass and pulled his pants back up. He looped his belt back on and walked towards his car. He opened the passenger door and slid the front seat to the front. He then grabbed Lizzie's stiff body and dragged it across the desolate field. He threw her onto the grass near where Casey had hidden. Edward hid, figuring that Casey was the impatient one. He hypothesized that she would run towards the highway. Taking a chance, he hid in the grass and patiently waited for her to run out. Sure enough, like a moth to a flame, Casey ran straight for the highway. He drove with both windows down and made it 20 minutes from League City towards Houston. He then got on the I-90 north and kept on driving as the sun set over downtown Houston. The time was now 7:15 p.m. Saturday. It was 9 a.m. and still no sign of Casey or Lizzie. Maria and Lilia were both sitting in the living room with Mary Elizabeth and Marianne.
"It's not like them to not come home. I know in my heart of hearts something terrible has happened."
Mary Elizabeth sobbed Lilia.
"Lilia and Maria, I know it is very worrisome, but we must pray and not lose faith. We don't know anything yet. Let's just call the police and file a missing persons report," consoled Mary Elizabeth.
Pastor Glenn, Juan, Hector, Henry, Evan, and the rest of the trade group, including Edward, walked into Lilia and Hector's living room. One thing that shocked Edward was that Mary Elizabeth and Pastor Glenn had not asked him about the incident at the creek. He was shocked at how Marianne acted like if nothing had happened. Maybe she hadn't tattled after all. He nervously looked around and noticed pictures of Lizzie in kindergarten up on the living room walls.
"Hey, were you able to find anything at the church?" asked Mary Elizabeth.
"No, honey," answered Pastor Glenn. "The troop helped, but unfortunately, nothing. We even looked past the creek and not a sign of them." "Well, we will be calling the police then," stated Maria, who reached for the telephone on the wall, and she began dialing.
"Yes, police? I would like to make a missing persons report. It's going to be 2, actually. One is my daughter. The other is her friend. Yeah. Yes. Her mother is also here. We are on 1145 Fall Avenue, New Caney, near Kingwood."
She hung up the phone and made her way towards Mary Elizabeth and Lilia.
"I don't have a good feeling about this, Lily."
"Yes, Maria," answered Lilia.
"Always knows." Yes, I thought the killings had stopped already. Me too, Lily. Do you think that our... It's best not to think of such things and just pray, emphasized Mary Elizabeth. The police say, she asked. They're sending some detectives over. In the meantime, I'm going to put some coffee. Lilia stayed staring at Edward. Tall, fair skin, and with light brown gelled hair. Edward caught her looking at him, and she quickly turned away. Edward made his way towards Lilia on the couch. Hey, I'm so sorry, but we're going to find your girls, he assured. ¿Quién eres tú? Asked Lilia. Ay, perdón. Me llamo Eduardo, y estoy con el grupo Pre, he answered. How did you know my Lizzie? Asked Lilia. Oh, well, her and Casey assisted us all week long during camp, and we had a good time, which is why we stayed an extra few days to help you all find them. Sarah walked in from behind him and hugged Lilia. She then sat next to her. Behind her came in Hector, who was followed by 2 detectives. They're here, Lily. Go tell Maria and Juan. Lilia stood up and walked towards the kitchen. She came back out with Juan and Maria a moment later. Lilia sat on the 3-seater couch with Sarah and next to Hector, and Juan and Maria stood behind them. Good morning, I am Detective Lopez, and this is my partner, Detective Miller. I understand there are 2 girls missing? Yes, our girls, sobbed Maria. I understand this might be very difficult, but we're going to need all of you to tell us what the girls look like, what they were wearing the last time you saw them. Elizabeth is short, fair skin, with straight hair, long, reaches to her back. She's about 5'2" and weighs 110 pounds and is athletic. She runs track, described Lilia. Social marks, dental work, piercings, tattoos. No, Señor Lopez. My Lizzie is an angel and does not have tattoos, Lilia answered, offended. What was she wearing? Asked Lopez. I don't know. I was already gone for work by the time she left to camp with Casey and Juan. Mr. Fuentes, you drove the girls to school? Asked Detective Miller. Yes, every morning for the past 13 years, he responded. So you all have known each other for quite some time now, asked Miller. Yes. Can you tell us what they were wearing? I can try. Elizabeth was wearing jeans, her Templo Nuestro red polo shirt, and some tennis shoes. What kind of shoes? I'm not too sure, just regular sneakers, I guess, answered Mr. Fuentes. What about Casey? The same. She was wearing the same uniforms as they're both youth leaders at the camp. And a camp. What church is the camp for? Our church is the Templo Nuestro church in downtown Houston. Any reason y'all prefer that one over the ones here? We're Christians, not Lutherans. Okay, and what does Casey look like, Mr. and Mrs. Fuentes? Asked Miller. Well, Casey is a brunette like Lizzie, only with curly hair and slightly taller. She's about 5'5" and also athletic, explained Maria. Is she also on the track team? Asked Lopez. Yes. Okay, and the last place they've been seen is at the Templo Nuestro church near I-90 in downtown Houston. Lopez wrote this down on his notepad. Since they are minors, 16, we'll get this information out to the Houston County ASAP. Both detectives stepped out and left. Mary Elizabeth and Pastor Glenn took their place and comforted both families. Keep looking for them, assured Pastor Glenn. Where? Asked Mary Elizabeth. We'll look again at the church. What if they took the bus and went missing, mentioned Maria. Why would they take the bus? Asked Mary Elizabeth. They can get rides from us. Well, Juan was running late from the meeting, so he asked Marcela to tell them about the bus, Maria. Maybe Marcela saw them last, figured Mary Elizabeth. What do you mean? The girls had to sign out every day along with the youth leaders at the end of each camp day. The sign-out requires a timeout as well. Maybe we can look at the logs and see when they signed out, suggested Mary Elizabeth. The 3 families hopped into their individual cars and followed Mary Elizabeth down the road. The troop joined the caravan in their prey van and followed them as well. After 45 minutes on the highway, they finally reached Templo Nuestro Church. Rather than adhering to the parking lines sprayed on the floor, everyone parked whichever way and immediately made their way towards the administration building. Pastor Glenn nervously unlocked the door and swung the glass doors wide open. Mary Elizabeth, Lilia, and Maria quickly rushed in and made their way towards Marcela's office. Mary Elizabeth took the keys out of her front pocket and unlocked the side entrance leading into the office. The 3 walked in. Lilia and Maria did not know what to look for, but Mary Elizabeth did. She got a white binder and flipped through it. She flipped through it once fast, and now the second, and then the 3rd time she scanned slowly. What's wrong? Asked Lilia, knowing too well what if the girls had signed out. Their signatures would have been found already. They didn't sign out Friday, whispered Mary Elizabeth. What? Asked Maria in disbelief. They didn't sign out Friday. They only signed in Friday morning.
But they didn't sign out, restated Mary Elizabeth.
So what does that mean? Asked Lilia.
Then walked in Pastor Glenn.
What did you find? He asked.
The girls did not sign out Friday. Was the office locked during the dance? I don't know. Where was Marcela? Asked Glenn. At the dance. It shows everybody signed out except them, Mary Elizabeth explained. Maybe they're still here, stated Juan, who walked in behind Pastor Glenn. Again, the group took off scanning the parking lot and buildings of Templo Nuestro's church. The troop also joined by heading towards the fields and the creek. Mary Elizabeth picked up the phone and called the Houston Police Department.
I'm calling in regards to the missing girls in Ucani.
Yes, well, I don't know if you all know this, but here's these girls that have gone missing since last night from here downtown Houston.
I'm calling from Templo Nuestro Church, Mary Elizabeth continued explaining. She figured if showing them the sign-out binder could help, why not use it? The time was noon and still no sign of the girls. The search party paused and sat for lunch. Pizza was delivered. They were all sitting in the assembly hall. The men in troop ate. The three mothers didn't. You have to eat something besides coffee, pleaded Hector with Lilia.
I can't, Hector. I know something isn't right. Girls have never done something like this before. My intuition is telling me that something is very wrong, she hypothesized. Stella walked in with her husband, Pastor Emmanuel, with a box of baked goods. I came as soon as Marianne called me, she stated. The radio just began announcing the girl's disappearance, added Emmanuel. Marcel, do you remember if the girls left early or if you saw them at the dance yesterday? Asked Mary Elizabeth. No, I was dancing with the kids in the troop, she answered. Man, did you? Emmanuel looked at her, shaking his head in disagreement. No, I was on the dance floor as well, he answered, to everyone's disappointment. We wish we could help you out more, stated Isaiah, but we have to hit the road to make it to San Antonio for the other camp, he stated. It's okay, stated Pastor Glenn. Thanks for the help anyway. We really appreciate your help, added Mary Elizabeth. Here, take some pizza for the road. She handed them 3 unopened boxes. The troop got up and hugged Pastor Glenn. Mary Elizabeth, Marcela, Pastor Emmanuel, Juan, Hector, Lilia, and Maria. We will be praying for their safe return, stated Edward, who was the last to give the farewell hugs to the congregation. The troop walked out of the church's assembly building and loaded onto the white gray van. They drove off, never to be seen again. Hours had gone by and still no sign of the girls. Once the troop left, the remaining pastor showed up and began searching the area 3 more times. Nothing. Pastor Gilberto and his wife Lucinda checked closets and storage bins. Hector, Juan, and Pastor Ramiro searched 2 miles from the church. Also no sign. All they found was brown bags and sack lunches. Marcela searched the administration building with volunteers who had heard about the girls vanishing. Mary Elizabeth and Pastor Glenn were talking to the police and news crews about the girls. Maria and Lilia waited at the church in case the girls returned. 4 hours had passed. Still no sign of them. Another hour passed. Now 5:05 p.m., and a handful of volunteers arrived. A dozen people showed up. Still in shock that there was no sign of their girls, Lilia and Maria allowed Mary Elizabeth to handle the crowd. She broke them up into teams and they went past beyond the 2 miles of the creek, 4 miles further down. Another went north instead. The third went east and the fourth went west. Bush, mud, and brush with sticks. Nothing. The team that headed north ended up under I-90 and found nothing. The team that ended up west also found nothing. Head back. No group found any signs of the girls. After 2 hours, the 3 families headed back home. It was 7:45, heading into New Caney. The sun was barely beginning to set. Lilia wondered why there wasn't any sign of the girls. What cruel God would allow this to happen? Sunday. 10 a.m. 2 little boys ride their bikes alongside a golden retriever named Lucky. One boy, husky, fair skin with blue eyes and a buzz cut, rode his black bike. The second boy was skinny with long black shaggy hair, brown eyes, fair skin, with freckles. He also rode a green and black bike. The first day of summer. School had just ended, and the boys had no care in the world. 11, why would they anyway? The sun was shining, and the grass illuminated and danced with the breeze. Both boys were heading down Irving Road. They made a left on Calder and kept riding their bikes. Passed a few blocks followed by grass, trees, and weeds. The boys paused and looked at the abandoned oil fields. Once the boom of Houston and Galveston, now a ghost. He took off barking and running. Both boys quickly pedaled to keep up. "What is it, boys?" shouted the huskier one.
Then suddenly Lucky made a sharp left onto a grassy stretch of land. The boys rode over the broken glass. "Careful with the tires," shouted the skinnier one. "I'm trying to keep up with Lucky, Pat," shouted the other boy. Lucky suddenly stopped at the end of the makeshift path on the grass and began whining. "What's the matter, boy?" asked the huskier boy. He suddenly stopped in his tracks too. "What did you find?" asked Patrick, who finally caught up with his friend. Both boys and the dog stood in shock. The body of a tan brunette with straight hair, wearing a tracksuit, was found lifeless at the end of the path. Her neck had a big purple mark around it, and her eyes were staring wide at the sky. Both boys dropped their bikes and ran back the road which they came. 30 minutes later. Within a few minutes, Calder Road was closed off and surrounded with squad cars, forensic vans, medical examiner, onlookers, several news reporters. Here live from Houston Fox 26, 2 bodies have been found on the stretch of the infamous Calder Road field between Galveston and Houston, right here in League City. I'm Trisha Sanchez reporting to you live and on site. A tan woman in a red skirt suit spoke in front of the camera. Aquí reportándoles desde el Calder Road, aquí entre Houston y la isla de Galveston, se encuentra 2 chicas menores de 18 años muertas. A short tan man with salt and pepper hair. A tall 6'2" tan man with black curly hair in a tan suit walked past the yellow tape. "Excuse me, sir, we're going to need you too," said an officer before he was interrupted by the man's badge. "Oh, detective, right this way." Both men proceeded to where the medical examiner was taking photos of the deceased bodies. Further down, another examiner in a white suit and goggles was taking photos. "What do we have here?" he asked. Female Vicks found a couple of feet from each other, assuming they were both killed at the same time, informed an officer. "Any ID or belongings?" "No, sir. Nothing on them at all, which is strange. You know how teen girls are." "What's your name, detective?" "Detective Joe Lopez with the New Caney Police Department, and also worked for the Houston Homicide Division for 15 years before moving to New Caney," stated Detective Lopez. "The death?" he asked. "Not sure yet," answered a female voice in the white examiner suit. "However, ligature marks around the neck show that she was strangled. The shards of glass show that she wasn't murdered here, but dumped." "What else?" "The shards of glass were found a few feet away, assuming from a van. Time of death is about less than 24 hours, judging by the stage of decomposition." Lopez was writing down what the medical examiner was saying on his notepad. He didn't really look at the first Jane Doe, and the other body he asked while still writing down the information. "Go ask Helen over there," she directed. She went back to taking more photos of the victim. "And your name?" he asked her. "Rachel Wood, lead medical examiner of League City, Texas. Here's my card in case you need to call me for anything else, detective," she stated while handing him a card. "Thank you, Miss Wood," he said while walking away. Joe took a few more steps back towards the direction he came. Close to the street sign of Irving and Calder Road, he met up with the second medical examiner. "Helen, what have you got here?" "What we have here is an unidentified female who appeared to have been strangled. She was found face down and also has a bruise on her lower back. I am willing to bet cause of death was strangulation. The mark of a buckle is right on the center of her neck." "Anything else?" "They also found shards of glass all over her hands and some DNA on her fingertips. We will need to take the swabs down to the lab and find out if they match anyone in the database. Assuming by the way she was found, she tried escaping her attacker." "Any ID on her?" "No, nothing, detective. Whoever did this thought about it thoroughly." "How long before we get the results on the swabs?" "About 72 hours to a week. We got other homicides in Houston as well, detective." "All right, can you turn her around for me?" Detective Lopez instructed. "You heard him, boys," shouted Helen. 2 bigger officers came and Jane Doe number 2 over, and just then it hit Detective Lopez. He had seen these Jane Does before. "What's wrong, detective? Is this your first homicide?" asked Helen. Lopez walked away from the crime scene while pulling his black Nokia 1010. He began dialing frantically. The phone rang twice and picked up. "Miller here," the voice answered. "We got a lead." Okay, and that's the end of summer of 1997. I am your host and author of the story, Ileana Jade. What an ending. For those of you just tuning in or are new to the Introverted Poets podcast, we are a safe space for the shy writer and poet who wishes to remain anonymous. We allow for them to submit their works anonymously and do readings. However, due to this being the first episode of season 2, we don't have an interview portion. I will be answering questions from the ones submitted to our social media accounts since they were posted 2 weeks in advance to airing this fortnight special event. Links for our social media accounts will be provided in the description below.
Hey,
It's Ruby
and Anna.
with Time to Waste.
A show about nothing.
That was a little promo for a podcast called Time to Waste by three good friends of mine named Anna, Ruby, and Amanda. The same place you hear our podcast is where you'll find theirs. Time to Waste is an amazing podcast, to say the least, and it's hilarious. I have to be really careful when I'm listening to them, because if I listen to them while I'm doing makeup, I'm going to come out looking like a clown, and not a funny clown, like a John Wayne Gacy clown. Ugh. And as mentioned in previous episodes, more information for Time to Waste will be posted on our episode's description. Now we're going to go into the Q&A for this episode. And it's not necessarily a Q&A. It's just me answering questions submitted by those who have read Summer of 1997 up on our Tumblr at www.theintrovertedpoetspodcast.tumblr.com. And the questions are submitted via Twitter, email, Messenger, Tumblr, and Instagram. And there was quite a few questions that we're going to get through. I'm only going to answer a couple just because I don't want to take too much time. Each episode was almost an hour, and whoopsies, not the point. But this first question, you write crime fiction. As mentioned in the previous season, I typically write autobiographical fiction. But since a very young age, I've always been into true crime, unsolved crimes. It first started with like Unsolved Mysteries with Robert Stack and then Dennis Ferreira. And then it turned into the Oxygen stuff like Snapped and now Discovery ID. And now I'm just watching stuff off of YouTube like Criminally Listed, Top 5 Unknowns, and reading like the book by Lieutenant Joe Kanda. He had a show on Discovery ID called Homicide Detective, and it's like I think that's the title of the book, and he recounts stories that they didn't air on TV because they were too violent and gruesome, and for good reason, they really are. And so that's what got me into writing true crime. So this next question reads, who is Edward based off of? Originally, this is going to sound horrible, but it is what it is. Edward is based off of an ex-boyfriend of mine, and it was originally going to be like a diss piece, but then it just turned into something more. I was like, no, I'm better than that. Like, creatively too, like, I can write a better character than that. So, I created Edward, and I took bits and pieces off of certain serial killers, like the narcissism I got straight off of Ted Bundy, because Ted Bundy was one narcissistic SOB. And also, like, Edward's attention to detail and capability of being able to hide in plain sight and have that Jekyll and Hyde thing going for him. So it's a little bit of everything, but more than nothing, Ted, because he's just trash. And there's more research about him. But the way he goes about it is going to be very different, I say. Or maybe not. Question 3 reads, who are Lizzie and Casey based off of? So Lizzie and Casey are based off of like me and my cousin, just because like that's what I know. And not just that, but I made them a little bit more reckless just because in my writing I really want to highlight like the polarity and the contrast and the similarities in the characters, if that makes sense. Question 4 reads, what secrets are the minor characters hiding, such as Sarah, Catherine, and the parents? Will there be more to their stories? So, like I mentioned in the first question, that this started like a one narrative as the collector, but then it expanded into Summer of 1987, and now I'm working on the third part and the novel, so it's kind of like a series, I guess. I guess the fourth part would be the last one. So I just went off on a tangent and created like my own universe and my own world where like these characters are all going to be related one way or another. But that's like, I don't know, I don't want to say too much, but it's going to be fun. I'm having a lot of fun with it. I'm not following no set outline. I'm just writing the scenes I want to write first. And then I'll think about how I get there. But it needs to make sense because it still has to be realistic fiction since it is basing it off of a true crime. The next question reads, what themes are there besides the obvious murder mystery? It's just a critique on the hypocrisy and the duality that certain people live, at least through my experience with this one particular part of life. I'm not saying that like it's this way for everybody, but it was just a creative piece that I'm having fun with, and take what you will from it. And also kind of like an attack on how women have a certain rank they must adhere to, and that's always bothered me. So I made sure I mentioned that here and there. And also, it's just a throwback to those stay away from drugs people that they would take to us, and that they would make us sign paper pledges and stuff like that. And it is a creative piece and it's a fun piece, but also I made sure to load it with a lot of like obvious critiques and attacks on certain groups. But it's not to say that all of them are bad, and you know, it's just the way it is, I guess, the way I see it. And it's not to stigmatize or be hateful. Question 8 reads, what genre is this? It would be a crime fiction or realistic fiction as well. And the next question is, what is the overall mood? There it is. The mood is, I want it to be entertaining, I want it to be thrilling, and I also want it to be funny, most importantly. And fun. Well, funny. The next question is, what is the process of writing or for writing Summer of 1987 in The Collector look like? Very similar yet different processes. Like I said, I do not like using outlines just because I feel that I'm undiagnosed ADHD, high functioning, or if that's even the proper terminology for that. I'm not too sure. I might have to double check that. But I cannot follow outlines. I feel like it's a little too restricting. So, like I mentioned, I write the scenes I wanted to write first. And then I went to, okay, well, how are we going to get there? Or how would you really get there? But for The Collector, it started off like very linearly. I went from beginning to end. I was writing like, okay, this is a contemplative piece. I'm getting very philosophical. I'm looking back. I'm reflecting. And then I was just like, I'm getting bored. Let's do something else. And then it took a total turn, a 180, and it ended like where you wouldn't expect it to end. Whereas with Summer of 1987, I had to do more research. I knew how I wanted it to end, but I definitely had to think about how I wanted to get there carefully with research. And also, like, I had to go back and look at my journals and think about personal anecdotes I was writing when I was casing Lizzie's age, because I remember I wrote about one of those stay away from drugs groups when they went to visit my middle school, and I was really like impacted by it for whatever reason. Probably because I thought one of the guys was cute or whatever. And so I went back and I was like, okay, this is what I'm going to use for this character. And that's basically how Summer of 1987 is working. And now for part 3, Spring Break 1988. And then part 5, I haven't chosen a title for it, but for those, I am thinking about the endings, and some of them I'm thinking about doing a whole completely different script with it. But I still want all the minor characters to somehow connect here and there. But that's already, like I said, giving away too much. So on to the next question. How does writing these stories differ from anything else you've written? So as mentioned in the previous season, in the first question, I usually write autobiographical fiction. And I read about basically my heart being broken into shreds. Yay. And also about how I feel about certain things, what I've done in my life. And that's usually just, free writing. I don't really have to think. It's just go, go, go. But with this, I really got to think and get really clever about it, because I don't want to make it like cliche either. I want to make it fun. I want to make it like not what you expect. I'm not too sure how I feel about Edward getting, quote unquote, Edward, because the name he's using here, getting caught. I don't know. Like, I really like him. Like, I never thought I would like my antagonist as much as I do. I don't really care for the protagonist. Next question is, what are the takeaway from these stories? I guess the main takeaway is just the hypocrisy certain institutions have, and just how like there's corruption in all levels, and also just like you never know a person until you know a person. It's just layers and layers of things. I can go on, but I don't want to give too much away. I would most definitely like to hear what other people thought from it, what they took from the stories. And this next question is, do you have a set idea how you want the series to end? As mentioned earlier, I do, but I don't. I do because, like, I kind of want to make it as realistic as possible and as true as it is to the cases it's based off of. As I mentioned in the first episode, it's based off of the I-35 Texas killing fields. I-45. Yes, I-45 Texas killing fields. And as mentioned, if you go to YouTube and look up criminally listed, you'll find the Texas killing fields. And a lot of these killers were not caught for a lot of these girls, and many of the investigators believe that it was multiple serial killers at the same time. So I don't know how I feel about that. I don't know if I want it to just only be Edward, or do I want it to be more? So it's something I have to think about. But for now, I'm just focusing on part 3. And the final question is, can you tell us more about the novel you're working on pertaining to these 2 stories, The Collector and Summer of 1987? Okay, so as mentioned, it's on the I-45 Texas killing fields, and it's a stretch of highway that has been a famous dumping ground for more than 30 years, since the 70s, and it's been going on still. However, I do want to make it more based in Laredo, because there's a lot of murder that goes on here that doesn't really get talked about. But I wanted to, like, The Collector is supposed to be just setting base for the novel, where in the novel they find one of the bodies here at Father McNabote Park, and it's true, there have been bodies found there. And I just wanted to write a story about that Jane Doe. And then I thought, why not connect it to The Collector? And then why not connect The Collector to Summer of 1987? And there's where it just took off, where I kind of want to make each victim a narrative. And then fictional victim, not the real one, but like a fictional victim, a narrative. And I want it to I want the novel to have references to that, if that makes sense. But it's a lot of research that I have to do. It's a lot of fine tuning. And who knows, like, maybe I'll stop doing that and throw it away. But for now, that's what it is. And with that concludes the 4-night season 2 premiere of the Introverted Poets podcast. I have been your host and narrator, Ileana Jade. Tune in next time on April 3rd to check out A Goddess on Fire. I've been posting her poems for a while now, but I'll be reposting them on the Instagram, Tumblr, and Twitter. More links will be provided in the description. And also check out our episode's description for all the cool social medias you all should follow. And if you're from Laredo, check out Coffee and Magic on 107.3 FM with Sammy the House and Elsa. As mentioned before, we are never asked or paid to promote content or creators or streamers. This is just stuff that we find cool and think they should be touted out, and we want to make Laredo proud, whether you are still living or not in Laredo and are creating something, or a small business owner. We want to make sure you get touted out and heard about. It's time for the small fish to swim in the bigger pond. As always, stay safe this spring break.